But I want to say it's what it is. Right.
Good evening and welcome to the Scarborough Town Council workshop regarding the Maine Inland Fisheries and Wildlife letter regarding plovers. It is Wednesday, April 15th, 2026, just past 5:30 p.m. We have all councilors present with Councilor Anderson making his arrival now. Just to sort of tee things up, this is a workshop. The council will not be taking any formal votes this evening. We are hoping that we'll have some constructive discussion. We have a lot of resources at our disposal, both in terms of what was provided previously in writing by the town and by outside sources. And we're fortunate to have some guests with us this evening who are here as impartial contributors to help us get our heads around the facts and think about potential options. And in that spirit, I will hand it off to town manager and we'll kick it off.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. For my purposes, I just want to provide a quick orientation to the documents that were provided, and I appreciate your comments at the outset. The way I see this meeting is before the council considers kind of a response, if any. I think it's important for there to be a common base of knowledge and understanding. And there's a lot of kind of interrelated pieces that play off each other. And I think that's important context just for all of you to know to make an informed decision. So just bear with me as I give a quick little orientation to what was provided. First in the packet is the letter from IF&W that was referenced. This was in response to some data and material that IF&W received and apparently caused some concern in their minds, and they provided some recommendations, very specific recommendations, but also some allusion to the fact that there could be other ways to satisfy those concerns as well. That may be part of your discussion. Secondly, I have included a memorandum from the town attorney. I started communicating with the town attorney really for my own education to make sure I understood kind of the landscape. And very quickly, I appreciated that that information probably is of interest and of value to all of you and to the public. So intentionally, this memo doesn't provide legal advice to the town council. It really is intended to provide that context and backdrop to all the interrelated pieces. Some of the territory covered there, and I hope it's fairly self-explanatory, but I'll just give an overview very quickly. It really talks about kind of the interplay between our animal control ordinance and our beach management agreement in particular. There's been some interest in understanding what incidental take permits are, and that's a federal process that's available to us. And I did ask her to spend a little time just helping us understand what that is, whether that's an avenue worth pursuing. She also lays out some basic considerations, again, short of legal advice, but I think gives a fairly thorough overview of what your options are. At some point, should you require or choose a path and want to know more about any legal risks or challenges or maybe benefits of a particular path, certainly you could have an executive session with legal counsel to receive, that candid, direct feedback from her. So I'll leave that up to you, depending where your conversation takes you. I also, just for background, provided the actual animal control ordinance. It originally dates back from the year 2000, but substantively, really to the issues that we're talking about tonight, it really goes back to 2011. There were some slight touches in 2014, but those really didn't change the substance, and we have really remained with a fairly consistent set of rules and regulations since then. I should mention what kind of prompted those changes in 2011 was an incident on Pine Point Beach that was considered a take by the federal regulators, and that really caused us to consider changes to our ordinance, which we ultimately took. And that was done at that time after a very lengthy process and thorough process that involved an ad hoc committee that was assembled to help kind of sort through that. I'm looking at Councilor Donovan. I believe he was a new councilor at the time, and that was his first introduction to civic matters, as I recall. Just moving along, I've also included the beach management agreement. The current agreement applies to all Scarborough beaches. There's a separate beach management agreement for Western Beach. Western Beach is owned by Prouds Neck Country Club. We are a party to that, really because the only access to Western is through Ferry Beach. Though there are some paths, they discourage any access to Western. And so just that connectivity makes us a party to that agreement as well. But this current beach management agreement, they're typically 3 years in term. This one expires at the end of the season. So it's effectively this fall, we'll be sitting down to renegotiate our next beach management agreement. That's just looking back at the attorney's letter, that's an important thing to keep in mind because we'll be back with IFNW and the federal regulators sooner than later in that context. And inevitably, these same issues will be discussed as part of those. And lastly, I've provided documents that I did not prepare as part of the evaluation last year through the Community Services Advisory Board. Town staff did do some comparative analysis looking at what regulations are in other Southern Maine beaches. What's included in your packet are two things. One is kind of a cheat sheet. It's what IFNW uses in their staff just to kind of keep track of the various rules and regulations. And Maine Audubon was kind enough to share theirs as well, and I think they are consistent with one another. So they're fairly abbreviated, but I think they give you a flavor of kind of what the landscape is in Southern Maine. So with that, that's kind of, I just wanted to, I don't expect that we'll dwell on any one of these documents, but it's there for your consideration. And I think through the course of discussion, you'll see how they kind of play against and support each other in this endeavor. The next part of the program, we do have some information. Jamie Fitch, our sustainability manager and Plover coordinator, I've asked her to provide kind of just a quick overview of kind of the current landscape of what the animal control regulations are, and also an overview of the volunteer program that she manages. And that will be followed by Laura Minnick Zitsky. She's a wildlife ecologist with the Coastal Birds and a Coastal Birds project director with Maine Audubon. And I really asked her, she's, to my knowledge, really the area expert when it comes to plovers, has been doing this as long as I've been manager, so quite some time. And so I think has a really good broad perspective on plovers. And I know she's a resource that I encourage you to draw upon just to understand all the dynamics at play here. So with that, Jamie?
Yeah, I might have Liam, you run the slides because I'm having a similar issue to what you often run into. Thanks, Liam. Why we have Plan B. So I'm going to give you all an overview of the animal control ordinance as it pertains to our beaches and piping plover protection, as well as our volunteer beach monitor program. As Tom said, I do coordinate our volunteer program and have done so for 8 years now. And I just want to mention, we're going to focus everything tonight on piping plovers, but I just also want to mention that the town also, our beaches also support endangered least terns. We've had colonies on Western Beach and or Higgins Beach the past 3 years. They're also endangered, also state and federally protected. And so the information that we're sharing tonight in terms of the rules and ordinances that protect plovers also apply to least terns. That'll probably be the last time you hear me say least tern tonight, though, however. So we'll jump in with the animal control ordinance. And so the ordinance specifies that all three of our beaches, Higgins, Ferry, and Western and Pine Point, have restricted areas that go into effect on April 1st and extend through Labor Day. These are areas where dogs either are not allowed in the case of Higgins and Ferry and Western, or must be leashed in the case of Pine Point. Our restricted areas extend the full width of the beach from the dune to the low tide line. And these are traditionally areas where plovers make their nests. Laura will get into kind of plover life cycle and what their requirements are, but essentially they nest up close to the dunes, but they have to make their way down to the water line to feed. And they do so from the day they hatch. The chicks will get up and start walking to the water within hours of hatching to find their own food. So while these areas are traditionally the areas where the plovers will make their nests, they can't read our restricted area signs any more than dogs can. So they will build their nests outside of the restricted area in some cases. The next few slides will speak to where the restricted areas are located on our beaches. So on Higgins Beach, again, dogs are prohibited from the restricted area, and which extends from Champion Street all the way to the Spurwink River. And on Ferry and Western, it extends from the eastern end of Ferry Beach parking lot and includes all of Western Beach. And again, no dogs are allowed in the restricted area. And then finally on Pine Point, the restricted area extends from Herd Park to the jetty and it does include the sandbar. The change here at Pine Point is that dogs need to be leashed in the restricted area when they're allowed on the beach. And so it's the kind of this period of time, April 1st to May 15th, dogs are allowed at all times. On our beaches in the restricted area on Pine Point, they need to be leashed. And we'll jump into our summer dog rules next.
I would just note those restricted areas back in 2011 were identified based on the data where the nesting was occurring. And in fact, I think if you look at the exhibits, those same maps in the ordinance, there are exhibits to the ordinance, you'll see little dots, and those dots were actually nests that were identified. So data helped define those areas.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I'll reiterate that the nests aren't always within our restricted areas. And in fact, Pine Point is the one beach where nests often are outside the restricted area. We do typically have at least one, sometimes two nests on the Old Orchard Beach end of Pine Point. So outside of the restricted area altogether. Starting April 15th, our summer dog rules go into effect. And so they're there on your screen. No dogs are allowed on the beach from dusk until dawn. From dawn until 9 a.m., dogs are allowed on our beaches outside the restricted area under voice control. No dogs are allowed on the beach from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then dogs are allowed back on the beach at 5 p.m., but they must be leashed. And again, these rules are in addition to the restricted area rules. There gets to be a little bit of confusion on Pine Point where we say dogs are allowed on leash in the restricted area with the caveat that that is only when dogs are allowed on the beach. So that's kind of like the animal control ordinance as it applies to plovers in a nutshell. And so I do want to take a few minutes to talk about our volunteer beach monitoring program, which is designed to assist with plover recovery efforts. So each year we have anywhere between 60 and 80 volunteers. As of today, we have 77 people registered to volunteer this season. And they collectively spend thousands of hours on our beach each season, helping us kind of protect piping plovers on our beaches. And any gains we're seeing in Scarborough are largely due to the contributions of the dedicated volunteers, and Laura can speak to kind of the trends on our beaches in just a moment. So our volunteers receive annual training on plover life cycle, their habitat, their habits, how they use the beach, the rules that protect them, both local, state, and federal, and their roles as volunteers. And their primary role is education. So, and we reinforce that in all of our training with them, that really they're there as kind of ambassadors, pointing out the plovers. It's really exciting for people to be able to see an endangered species in their backyard, and they're kind of adorable, as that picture on your screen demonstrates. But they often hide in plain sight. So our volunteers become very good at spotting the plovers. They camouflage really well. When they're just hatched, they're about the size of cotton balls. So really the best way to see them is kind of like looking at one of those old magic eye posters. You just blur your vision and wait until you see some motion out of the corner of your eye, and then you can typically see the little chicks. So our volunteers help visitors to our beaches spot piping plovers. It's important for people to know what they look like so that they can give them some space on the beach. They also will convey information about the rules on our beach, again, local, state, and federal, that apply to piping plovers. And they, a lot of it does focus around dealing with dogs on the beach and making sure that people are aware of restricted areas. If people with dogs are in restricted areas, asking them to either leash their dogs if they're on Pine Point and the dogs are off leash, or asking them to move to another area of the beach. They also will document their observations during their shifts. There's a whole host of things that they will document, including the number of plovers that they observed, both adults and chicks, the total number of dogs on the beach, the number of dogs that may be in the restricted area, activities around the marked nesting areas, incidents of harassing plovers or other wildlife, beach games being played too close to nesting areas, people flying kites or drones too close to nesting areas, holes dug on the beach, which has become kind of a common thing over the past couple of years, and then other areas that might be concerning. All of that information is entered after shifts. They're assigned shift into a Google form that populates a spreadsheet that I will then review, and at the end of the season, send it off to IF&W. And then volunteers will also report immediate concerns that they may have to the appropriate party, whether it's me, whether it's police dispatch, they may call the Audubon Plover hotline, depending on what the issue is, the severity of it. I get calls on the regular about new nests being spotted, or maybe a nest is hatched. I got a call last season about a gull that had picked up a plover chick and dropped it on the beach, and they were hoping we could find it and get it back to its parents. So a whole host of things, but our volunteers are really the eyes and ears on our beaches, and just they do a lot of great work, and obviously thousands of hours. They're very dedicated to what they do. So there are always opportunities for improving our program. Signage is always one suggestion. We do have better signage on order to mark our restricted areas, making them larger, more prominent. Hopefully they'll be more noticeable. Our dog rules signage is vastly improved over what it was, but it's still confusing. There's a lot of times to keep track of related to our dog rules. But the signs are bright and colorful, and hopefully they're catching people's attention as they're entering the beaches. So obviously I've mentioned just the breadth of the commitment our volunteers are making to this program. But it's a challenge. We're really fortunate that we have a lot of dedicated people who are interested in this program and in protecting the plovers, and are willing to spend time on our beaches and speak with people under conditions that aren't always pleasant. Hopefully those are few and far between, but it's unfortunate that unpleasant interactions with the public really stick with us and our volunteers. One of the challenges that we have experienced this year is this kind of early season between when our restricted areas begin and when our summer dog rules go into effect. That's 12 hours a day when we need to have coverage on our beaches. And in the past, we've had a couple residents who kind of provide gap coverage at Higgins specifically, that we kind of fill in when volunteers weren't available. And they conveyed that they're not available to do that this spring. So it's left, some challenges and concerns. I haven't heard of any issues so far, but we're 15 days into April. So we have another month to go before we really know how this kind of first season, without having a much stronger volunteer presence on Higgins Beach, is going to go. So as opposed to over the summer when we have kind of like two chunks of time when dogs are allowed on the beach, that's really where we focus our volunteer efforts during the high season of summer. But as days get warmer, we'll see how things play out. So that is my overview. I am happy to take questions if you have any before I turn things over to Laura.
I just want to punctuate the concern that Jamie noted at the end, though our volunteers are to be credited almost entirely with our success. And we truly have had success over these 12, 13 years. But I really do have a fear that it's not sustainable going forward, particularly that gap coverage. We have a couple of volunteers that are so incredibly dedicated to this cause. And without them, I fear our ability to provide the level of coverage and oversight that we have so far. Again, we continue to get good numbers kind of across the board for volunteers, but it's those couple of dedicated folks that cause me some concern. So far, so good, but that's just a cautionary note.
I don't know if, I have some questions about the volunteer program, so I don't know if it's appropriate more at the end or not. Also, so right now, you can't be off leash in Pine Point past the signs, correct? So like I called dispatch on Saturday. Was that related to you?
Was that related to me?
That
No.
there's activity, like, does that get relayed to someone that people are reporting that that it's not happening? Because it is happening right now. And so like, when I hear right now already that you're short volunteers, I'm like, oh, that's unfortunate. And then is it information just going on deaf ears? Is it getting relayed?
So typically when it's reported to dispatch, if they have someone that can, in the area that can respond, they will. That information isn't automatically relayed to me, and honestly, after the fact, there's nothing I can do about that specific circumstance. But we
Track it.
will get the information at the end of the,
I
at the
think
end.
that's what I was wondering. I have the same concerns about the volunteer program, and I was just kind of curious if other communities use that specifically, if it's successful, and also if the volunteers are managing an ordinance like ours.
You can probably speak to volunteers and other.
Yeah, volunteers are really important in a lot of communities. So there might be actually one minor difference between the IFNW and our municipal dog rule sheet is that Kennebunkport no longer has the same sort of restricted and unrestricted areas because they found it too confusing and challenging to enforce. So there are no other municipalities that have a restricted and restricted area and have to manage that component. So yes, volunteers are an incredible resource in other communities, but no, they are not charged with education to the same degree, I think that sometimes that Scarborough has.
Just to follow up on that, are those other communities trying to staff a 12-hour day of monitoring? Meaning,
So the only municipalities in the state of Maine that actually have ownership or management of beaches that allow off-leash dogs during plover season after April 1st are Scarborough and Old Orchard Beach. So no.
thank you.
Can you clarify that answer for us as to which coastal communities that have plovers do not permit dogs on and which ones do permit?
Well, where it gets very confusing is like land ownership on our beaches, which I know you are probably all familiar with. So there are some beaches where there are off-leash dogs because there's some dispute or confusion about where, but in terms of where there is like an official either a large singular private landowner such as Prouts Neck or it's owned by state or federal or municipal governments. There are no off-leash dogs permitted after April 1st, except for Scarborough and Old Orchard. Does that make sense?
Lots of caveats, but essentially it's Scarborough and Old Orchard that allow off-leash dogs.
Yes, and it is confusing with different ownerships when you have private lands, and because people in Maine do own to low water mark, so in certain communities and certain beaches.
Jamie, I don't know if this is something you can speak to, but at least anecdotally, based on what you know from firsthand experience and what you hear from the volunteers, is there a sense of sort of rough proportion between Scarborough residents and visitors in terms of those who might need more education?
Yeah, I think anecdotally, I don't have hard numbers. Anecdotally, it is our kind of belief that Scarborough residents are pretty well informed about our ordinances and our rules. Always require a little reminders around April 1st and May 15th when the switch happens. But for the most part, you know, Scarborough residents understand and know the rules. That's not to say that they always abide by them. I do hear from volunteers letting me know they try to interact with someone and they're like, yeah, I know, but they just keep carrying on doing what they're doing. But we do believe that the majority of the challenges are from people who are out of town, are not regularly engaged with the town on social media and our newsletter, our website, and aren't aware of our rules on the beach. And as more towns put restrictions in place saying that dogs can't use beaches in their town, they're coming to our town because we do allow dogs off leash on our beach.
And I would say, in my view, undoubtedly that kind of compliance and success of our residents knowing the rules and following the rules has a lot to do with the dogs group that was part of crafting this many years ago and have continued to be, strong advocates and appreciating the liberties they have under this ordinance and appreciate that they need to be actively involved with compliance. And so I think that has a lot to do with why our residents know about it and follow the rules.
Question. Do we have a Pareto that shows us like what are the most common violations and when, in terms of what is being violated? And then as a follow-up, when there is an observation and some education that happens, do we also track like whether compliance occurred versus when it didn't?
We do get that information in the observation form. So there are kind of comment fields where we'll ask them to, where our volunteers will put in kind of like comment on interactions that they may have had. And a lot of times it is person with dog off leash in the restricted area. I spoke with them, they put the dog on leash and moved to another side of the beach. We don't have a good way to kind of really track compliance. That's like one instance. So, and we don't necessarily know if they're like frequent flyers, so to speak, if they're like regularly not in compliance with the ordinance and spoken to and then maybe comply, but maybe they're, the next time they come, they're still going to have their dog off leash where it's not supposed to be. So those types of things, without having someone on the beach the full period of time marking down every observation, it's really hit or miss. So, and it's hard to have a good way to thoroughly document that in an online form that we're trying to make fairly easy for our volunteers to fill out and not too time consuming and onerous.
So in theory, in our data, like I think that's where it's like challenging to draw really solid conclusions from our data because there's so many caveats. Like what I heard you just say, not to, like in theory, it could be one person who comes to the beach every day where 3 monitors maybe see them, document it, and it's one person who's, consistently violating it, and that could skew all these observations where we say, oh, we have a problem, but in reality, it could be a very targeted problem. And so that's where I feel like there's a little bit of an opportunity, it sounds like, to think about.
I think that we know that it's not a targeted problem. I think that we know that it's pretty profuse. It is probably not like consistent, like every day at this time, we're going to have someone off leash or something like that. But I think we have our volunteers shifts don't always overlap. So I'm not typically concerned that, and they enter like the time of their shift. So we're able to see if they are on shift and they are have similar observations, then we can maybe pull out one of those and pull that out of the data. So where shifts overlap, we can kind of call that out from the observation forms now that everything is digital. It used to be handwritten and it was a nightmare. So, I'm just saying, I don't like, and even talking with our animal control officer, like she gives a lot of verbal warnings because she feels like I haven't necessarily spoken with this person yet. And I want to give them benefit of the doubt. And I want to let them, have the opportunity to comply, but she's not down there every day. So she won't necessarily know if it's a repeat offender. There are instances where, it is a chronic issue and our volunteers are like, it's this person, it's like this dog again. So it's a little bit of everything, as you can imagine, over a multi-month
So
season.
we don't have a Pareto so that we could say like, it looks like 70% of the time it's this time of day, this violation. That's like the biggest problem we need to solve for versus.
Yeah, no, we don't have, it's not that targeted and it's not that specific. It's, everybody has a different schedule. The weather's different every day. It's like, when can I fit in a trip to the beach? There's a lot of variables.
Would you like to continue with the?
Talking
overview?
about flowers,
Sure.
With what?
just
Well,
Laura will do
Great.
her portion.
Thank you.
Before I go in, I also want to make a clarifying comment that when I talked about off-leash dog rules on beaches, I'm referring to beaches that have nesting piping plovers. Just so I want to make sure that that was clear. Because, you know, there are other kinds of beaches.
Could I, sorry to cut you off right when you're about to get going, but just another clarifying item, just sort of for the record, is we're not talking about Scarborough Beach in any of this, because that's a state, that's under a completely different jurisdiction. And I'm just putting that out there because there may be people
Right.
viewing this who may be wondering why that's not part of this conversation.
And I do have, so I will say, I have Scarborough Beach in some of our numbers just because for comparison, but it's not, it's certainly not the focus. And now I just want to talk about plovers. So thank you. Again, my name is Laura Miniksitsky. I work at Maine Audubon and I'm the director of our Coastal Birds Project. But one of the things I'd like to emphasize is that I'm here not just representing my own experience, but an incredible amount of other people and work that has gone into this over the years. Maine Audubon began monitoring piping plovers in Maine in 1981. So that's what our data goes back to. But there are an incredible amount of folks out there doing great work, including Laura Williams as a biologist, also with Maine Audubon and field crews every year. We work very closely with Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Rachel Carson National Wildlife Refuge, also monitors some beaches, private landowners, municipalities, and I cannot sing the praises of volunteers up and down the coast enough. As Jamie highlighted in this community, it is really like the backbone of education and a lot of our work, which is essential. So I just wanted to put that even though I'm one person here, I just want to share that I'm representing a lot of a larger group. So today I just plan on really giving a little bit of a background around piping plovers. I'm going to talk about their population trends, mostly in Maine and Scarborough, but give also a little bit of a broader context. And then I'll talk about the timing for, in the spring in particular, for both arrival of piping plovers during the nesting season and then nest initiation. So piping plovers, they are, as you can see, a small sandy colored shorebird. They are a nest. So there's actually 3 populations. We're dealing with the Atlantic coast population. They nest from the Carolinas all the way up into Canada. Here in Maine, they really only nest in southern Maine, from Ogunquit up to Reed State Park in Georgetown. And that is just because they need really big, broad, sandy beaches in order to nest and raise their young. And then once you get farther down east past Georgetown, even like those little pocket beaches are not enough to sustain piping plovers. They are, as mentioned earlier, incredible at camouflage. That's really, subterfuge is one of the few things that they have in their bag of tricks in terms of survival. But they really have mastered the beach in many ways. So here in Maine, piping plovers are we have actually our own Maine Endangered Species Act and the Federal Endangered Species Act. So they're listed under both of those different acts. They're listed as endangered here in the state of Maine, and they are listed as threatened as the federal level. So threatened is just one kind of tier below endangered, but as a threatened species, the federal government, they're really afforded the same protections as an endangered species. So it is just an important thing to note. It gets very confusing if you, when you think about all the different agencies that are involved. In addition to the Endangered Species Act, piping plovers, like all of our native really migratory birds, are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So there's actually there's a lot of different things that that are important when protecting these birds. So I mentioned a little bit, they need broad sandy beaches, and yeah, they're what we call habitat specialists. So you know, some of the birds that you might be familiar with, like a robin, they can nest in a variety of different habitats and types. Whereas piping plovers, they have evolved to master the beach. That's really, that is the only place that they can nest, or they can nest and raise their young. So they nest in sort of upper beach and the dune to beach transition. Counter to what I think a lot of people think, they're not in the dense dune grass. I think a lot of people feel like that looks like good cover, but it's actually easier for predators to sneak up on adults while they're sitting and incubating a nest in that, and it's hard for chicks to move around. So the sweet spot for piping plovers is patchy grass, patchy vegetation for chicks to hide and to shade a nest maybe, but open enough that they can see everything. So, if for those of you, hopefully all of you have been out on Scarborough's beautiful beaches and seen their nesting areas, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I just want to make sure that I make that point clear. And then also feeding, they use the entire beach. As Jamie mentioned, and as I'll discuss, chicks forage, they forage running all over the beach, down to the water's line, up into the dune, trying to feed themselves. So unfortunately, like, they're not going to stay within the fenced areas. In fact, they literally cannot stay within the fenced areas. So every year, they start to come in around mid to late March is when we start seeing them, and they come through May. So now is the time. A week ago, the crew, the piping plover, the coastal birds crew it was our first day, a week ago today. And our first beach that we actually went to was Western, and we saw 21 piping plovers on Western Beach. So they come in March, and they're out there right now staking out a territory, finding a mate, and eventually kind of getting settled into their nesting locations. From there, we have nest initiation. So May is definitely peak nest initiation. And piping plovers, they lay just one egg at a time. If any of you have seen them, their eggs compared to their body size, it takes about a week for the female to lay a complete clutch for that full nest to be done, because it takes a lot of energy. So she'll initially find one nest or one little practice scrape is what we call or practice nests. The males will scrape, make potential nests all over the beach. The female will pick one, drop her eggs in there, and it'll take about a week for that nest to hatch, or that nest to be incubated, which is kind of it's counterintuitive to a lot of people, because for about a week, the plovers won't be incubating that nest, and they won't be necessarily defensive. But once, it's usually about 4 eggs. Once that last egg is laid, both males and females will share incubation duty. If you ever have the privilege to spend some time on a plover beach, you can usually watch them actually trade off. And it takes 28 days from that last egg for the chicks to hatch. Sometimes it seems counterintuitive that they don't incubate at that first egg, but the thing is, they need those chicks to hatch all at the same time. Because once they do hatch at 28 days, really, like, the gloves are off, those birds are going to be all over the place. Within hours, they're running all over the beach. So the term is precocial. I mean, just like a precocious toddler. Piping plover chicks, unlike a robin where the parent brings food to the chicks, piping plovers, they bring chicks to the food. So like turkey and ducks are kind of the same way. So the chicks need to feed themselves. They're running all over the beach, down to the water's edge, trying to feed themselves. And they're extremely mobile and very vulnerable because they can't fly, but they do move. And again, this is just a point that I tend to harp on because I think it's pretty staggering when you see a tiny cotton ball running around. And they're not always with adults, especially if all four eggs hatch. You have 4 chicks and 2 adults trying to keep tabs. I had twins, and so having 2 toddlers at the same time was challenging enough. But in this case, it's sort of like having 4 toddlers, sometimes all going in different directions, and the parents are trying to guide them to safety. They freeze and when they get scared or feel threatened because they camouflage, and broods, depending on what's going on, they can move great distances. So we've had birds actually hatch here in Scarborough in Pine Point, and then go down to Old Orchard. And they've actually gone up over 2 miles down past Old Orchard into Saco. So that only really happens when they get into it. That doesn't always happen, but it's just an important thing to know. So if all goes well for those, after about 25 days, it takes piping plovers to learn how to fly. That we call that fledgling. That's how we measure success when we're looking back at our numbers. But it is important to note that when there's a lot of heavy disturbance and piping plover chicks are not able to forage effectively throughout their chick life, that gets postponed. So, our folks in Old Orchard are always like, your information is wrong. It takes way longer for these birds to fledge in 25 days because Old Orchard, they have a lot to do with, and it takes them a little bit longer to bulk up and to grow into being able to fly. It's also important to note that even when they can fly at 25 days, they're not there's not an effective flyer necessarily. I mean, much like a toddler might start running around at 12 months, they can walk, they are capable of it, but they're going to fall down and they might they'll have some hiccups along the way. So plovers are similar in that regard. So here's where the graphs come. Please forgive me for some of the chaos, but I did want to make sure you see these numbers. I will say for these next 2 graphs, this is information that anybody can access from the Maine Audubon website, it's from our annual report that we do every year. So the black line you can see is the number of piping plover chicks fledged off of Maine beaches. And the yellow line is the number of chicks or of pairs on Maine beaches. Scarborough are in the blue and the red. Blue is the total number of pairs, and red is the number of chicks fledged. So obviously, Maine has more than just the town of Scarborough, but you can see both kind of follow the distinctive trend line. We had, we started out with very few birds when we began monitoring in 1981. Our numbers increased through 2002, and we saw a crash and lost 2/3 of our nesting population in the state of Maine over 5 years, and then gradually built back and now have been doing really well. And so in Maine, we actually had 174 piping plover chicks last year, or piping plover pairs last year, which is really incredible. A number that I think many years ago, I would not thought possible. But I think it's really important to note that's still 174 pairs is actually not very much. That's 350 birds. And so I have seen single species flocks much larger than that in my backyard of like red-winged blackbird, for example, which is not at risk. So just important to take that step back when you're looking at these numbers. But yeah, you see the same increase as we begin monitoring efforts, decrease, and then a rise. This is a really bad one, but I just wanted it up here. I did actually break it down by beach later on if people are interested. Again, this is all information you can get from our website. I just thought it kind of shows that each beach is a little different. You can see Western is the yellow, and we've had some great years fledging chicks off of Western Beach. Yeah, it's again, the same kind of overall pattern. And I'm gonna go, yeah, and I can go out in the end of the presentation if you want to go beach by beach. I have those pulled out. So again, I want to make sure that we take a step back and think about the greater context of 174 pairs last year is very good, but they are still in fact quite rare. And I think and we work very closely with our partners all up and down the coast. So Maine is part of a greater, we're part of a whole effort. And so we know what's going on with our partners, and we know that all of New England piping plovers are actually doing very well. If any of you spend time in Massachusetts, you've probably heard beach people in Massachusetts complain about it because they have about almost order of magnitude more birds than we do. So that is very exciting, but we also know from experience where we lost 2/3 of our entire population in 5 years, things can change quickly. So this is something that biologists from all of us that work on these birds, something always in the back of our head. And the other important thing to note is even though in New England we're doing well, the rest of the range of the Atlantic coast is not. So Canada has never, has really struggled quite a lot consistently. The mid-Atlantic up to New York, New Jersey, there have been some good years, some bad years, but New Jersey in particular, like we're doing a lot of the same things and they're really struggling. And our southern birds are really, really doing very poorly to the point where they're having kind of emergency meetings trying to figure out what to do. So it's just important to know that, yes, we're having some success, but take that big picture.
Can I ask a quick question? How does like weather and storms impact, like is that tracked to know like when there could be an anomaly because of really big storm event that
So
do something?
I think plovers will re-nest after big storms. And strangely, in the southern range, they actually need big storms because the vegetation gets too thick. Like their growing season is just too good. So they rely on a storm cycle to kind of break open the vegetation and make good nesting habitat. So there's been a lot of modeling in terms of kind of looking at those things. And as with everything else, it's a really complicated picture, and even people who dedicate their lives to modeling of this stuff, it's never just one piece. It's a very complex situation, but.
And just to add to that too, sea level rise plays a role in this. We lose nests if they are made too close to, our astronomical high tide lines. And then in 2024, with the large storms in January, a lot of the habitat in Maine was affected. Scarborough's beaches actually fared relatively well in comparison. So that's part of the reason we had a bump in 2024 is because our nesting habitat in Scarborough was better than some of the other beaches in other parts of the state.
Great. So, and I just also want to talk quickly. I mean, as I just mentioned, they will re-nest. And they can re-nest, 3-4 times within a season. That is a huge energetic cost. And it is known that actually subsequent nesting attempts tend to be less successful than the first one. But that isn't the main driver for their success. There really isn't, I guess, one. so one of the one focus we really adopt is to try and support as much early success as possible. Not only does that mean the birds tend to be more successful, it also means that the birds typically are off of the beach and at the peak beach season for people. So, I mean, these birds are out here. I've seen their footprints in the snow. They're here when most people don't necessarily want to be on the beach setting up their territories. And if they're able to do their thing and get some chicks off of the ground, they can be done with the nesting habitat or done off the beach, really where we still have a lot of July and August and some peak beach weather days ahead of us, which I know is a big consideration for a lot of folks that rely on beach passes and other things to try and folks visiting, using their beaches on warmer in those very fleeting warm moments in May. So switching a little bit over to the arrival timing. So this is not necessarily part of the formal data collection that Maine Audubon does for our Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife and U.S. Fish, but we do get a lot of reports, and sometimes we'll see them ourselves. We also have other, eBird and other ways to track this information. So, typically when people ask, I always say sometime between like St. Patrick's Day and the first day of spring. That's the conventional kind of normal arrival time. So that's kind of mid to late March. It always feels early every single year, even if you know it's coming, because as you all know, March in Maine is really still winter, even when spring hits. And then April is when we start to really see some extensive courtship and nesting behavior. So as I mentioned, birds will need to find and define territories. That means, so they'll try and identify the best place to be and then protect it from other potential, potential birds that might try and scope out their spot. They have to find a mate and mate. As I mentioned, the males, then part of this courtship is making scrapes or practice nests all in this territory, which we are seeing up and down Maine beaches right now. And then the female will select a scrape to lay an egg and to begin nest initiation. So again, we are not out on the beaches in March for our work. So we really rely on reports. So I have just some of our recently reported arrival dates here in Maine since 2019. But I have that asterisk because I want to say there are a few drivers, like weather is a big driver, because our reports are based on people being out there and seeing the birds. And if it's pouring rain or driving snow on March 17th or 18th, you're probably not going to have people walking the beach looking for these. So kind of take out all with a grain of salt. This year, we did have our earliest report ever on March 8th. And we saw there were birds on Ogunquit. We got pictures, so know that was a solid report from some of our volunteers down there. They were at Higgins within a few days. Yes, last year we had on March 11th, folks saw them on Higgins, so that was quite early as well. But again, even looking historically, it's always around St. Patrick's Day or first day of spring. I guess, yeah, so that's really, and it's not necessarily also geographically, a lot, I think people, you might immediately think, oh, well, obviously they'll come to Ogunquit first because it's first in the state, but Seawall Beach is in Phippsburg, past Bath or by Bath. And that was in 2021, that was our first reported plover on March 12th. So even though these distances are impressive for us, for when you consider that these birds are coming in from the Bahamas or further south, there's not that much of a difference to them between Ogunquit and Scarborough or Phippsburg. So just to make sure that's clear. And so these, sorry, I know it's kind of a little mind numbing, but I wanted to just share the last few years. We call this like observed nest initiation because again, we're not out at all the beaches. Maine Audubon's Coastal Birds Crew, we monitor about 30 different sites in the state of Maine. And so we're running all over the place trying to manage these birds and keeping an eye on things. So and sometimes we have lovely volunteers that catch the nest right at one egg, but that's not always the case. So yeah, just last year, we had 8 nests initiated before May 15th on Higgins Beach, and their nest initiation, the first time we saw it at Higgins was April 22nd. So that's, just a week from now. But really, as you just and I include Scarborough Beach State Park, even though the rules don't apply, but just to give a little more context, because it is like the same community. But as you can see, typically they'll start nesting at the end of April is the first time we see nests here, and sometimes early May as well. But it's consistently been before May 15th. And we typically have multiple nest attempts before the May 15th. So I will say, thinking about the bigger picture, things are a little bit earlier. There's really no question about that. It's not a huge shift, but things are a little bit earlier. Our earliest nesting nest that we've found is April 18th. And we have actually 2 years found nests on April 18th. So one was last year, but also in 2012, actually. So, they are a little bit earlier, but they've always come in March, really, and start nesting in April. And just a little side note, my first year on this project was 2009. And I remember, I always think Scarborough Beach State Park was actually our first nest in the state of Maine. So, you never know. So yeah, I just want to, again, remind that we really don't have the time and energy to visit beaches daily. So we don't necessarily find nests on the first day. And that when these eggs are discovered, that they actually represent weeks of nesting activity prior. So just want to make sure that was clear. And after this, I have those beach by beach graphs if anyone's interested, but I really want to thank everybody who helps us out, partners, landowners, you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for that. That was great. And you definitely don't need to apologize for dumping numbers and graphs on us. We're in the middle of budget season, so this is actually relatively light reading. One question I have, and I don't know if it's a question or an observation. I think you sort of spoke to it a little bit toward the end there, is that I think I've heard it said locally that, the plovers are here earlier now. And it seems to me from the data you've shared and the way you've described it is that's maybe not the case. It's really that, they've been here in March all along. But it's just that there are more eyes on them maybe. And the comparison that comes to mind for me is, we get headlines more and more about great white shark sightings in the Gulf of Maine. And I've heard it said that by marine biologists that the sharks have always been here, just that now people are looking for them and we have drones and they're easier to spot. Is that a similar dynamic? Plovers, do you think?
That's definitely, yes. I mean, they are a little bit, things have been shifting a little bit earlier, but that's definitely true. People are out there paying attention. We also have more birds more piping plovers than we used to.
Yeah, I actually thought that was one of the more, that was one line in the IF&W letter that really struck me, is that the success that we've had means obviously we've got more birds, we've got more numbers, and we also have more people. So they're going to be more encounters. So, other questions, comments?
Yeah, I'm just curious, in the data, like it looked like things were in the 80s and 90s going up and then it dipped. Like, do we know, and I'm assuming that happened across the state, like what was the driver for that dip?
Yeah, so we don't, we can't say with 100% confidence what happened, but what we really, so one of our key tools in terms of supporting nesting success is an exclosure, which is that metal fencing, kind of like almost, it looks like a cage. So we put that around the nest. And so the parents can go on and off, but most predators can't go in. And so that was a really successful tool in starting to boost those numbers. But unfortunately, that's still chicks, as you now know, or hopefully knew before, chicks move. So once the chicks hatch, all bets are off. So we think that predators really kind of shifted, and we used to lose most of our, we would be less successful because of nest loss, and then we started to lose more chicks because a lot of predators, we believe, figured out, oh, just wait a little while and then you'll still get them. So we think that was, and so that was a big factor. And we do a lot of work when we're putting up exclosures. We do a lot of decision making about whether or not that's the best tool for that moment now. And we don't necessarily do it lightly.
Thanks, that was wonderful, really great info. I'm curious about the vulnerability for the adults as they get here early, and that's who's showing up in March or into April and initiating the nest. I'm assuming they're not as vulnerable because they can fly, is that right? So the risk and vulnerability is really around the chicks.
The chicks are more vulnerable, but adults can be vulnerable too. In particular, when it comes to protecting and trying to defend their nest site, and that they can be vulnerable to predation by a variety of things at that time.
So I think where I was heading with that, I know where I was heading with it, is that if it's 28 days to hatch and they're starting nests in April and into May, that chicks really aren't here till late May. Is that right?
Yeah, chicks start in late May.
So then, as we're talking about that May 15th change, it may be that the vulnerable aspect of the species is already after May 15th. I know those aren't hard dates, but.
So it is, chicks are more vulnerable for certain, but adults are also vulnerable to a wide variety of predators. Yeah.
I'm sure.
So
Yeah.
to add to that, if the adults don't feel like the area that they've chosen for a nest is safe because of disturbances like predation or human interactions and things like that, they'll abandon the nest. And that's what Laura was saying, why it's really important to focus on early season success so that those first nests survive to hatch, so that the chicks themselves survive to fledge, and then they're off of our beaches. But if they've put energy into a nest and, you know, a fox comes along, a hawk comes along, a dog runs through it, and the nest is lost, then they have to make the decision, are they going to start over again or not? And if it's early enough in the season, typically they're going to start over again, which then just prolongs the nesting season.
And then just a quick follow-up on that, to the birds of legends they're gone. Do the adults typically come back to the same beaches?
Typically, especially if they've been successful.
Thanks.
But I really do want to make sure we're clear that adults are still vulnerable to
I think
predation. Okay, like it is not only chicks.
I'm sure others have questions or comments as well, but just to kind of piggyback on that line of questioning, do you see predation of the eggs?
Yes, and that's when we use those exclosures when possible. Yes, we do see predation and sometimes abandonment, as Jamie mentioned. If the adults feel like it is not safe, they'll move to.
Bill?
We don't have the sort of expertise to respond to IFW's request to strengthen things. So having you here gives us the opportunity to ask the question, how do you be respectful to dog owners' desires for access, further protect plovers, and get IFW's approval for what you're proposing. That's it in a nutshell, where we're going. And so I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity to ask you both, what sort of guidance would you give us?
I was told I was not sharing an opinion today. I'm just sharing facts. Yeah,
Or what have other towns done to successfully get IFW's approval? Whereas,
Wells just make a change?
Kennebunkport has made a relatively recent change. Yeah, other municipalities don't, do not permit off-leash dogs after April 1st.
do not permit dogs on the beach after April 1st,
Off-leash.
off leash.
Some don't permit dogs, like Agunquit doesn't allow dogs at all after April 1st. But,
So that's what IFW would like to see, not necessarily specifically that, but something like that, that would represent controls, but would not necessarily be unfairly restrictive to dogs, owners having access for their dog to the beach.
Yeah.
Because we need to understand where we're going.
That's what the US Fish and Wildlife Services guidance is, as well as if dogs are allowed on the beach during nesting season, that they be required to be leashed.
I want to make sure, oh, did you have something, Karen? I want to make sure in the time we have, we take at least a couple minutes to address the incidental take permit option, which was referenced. Based on my reading of what we received from the town's attorney and just my general knowledge of it, it doesn't sound like a terribly attractive option for a variety of reasons. Not to get ahead of things, but I want to make sure that for the benefit of the full council and everyone else here, that we speak to that. Are you?
I'll do my best. My understanding, it is something available to us through it's a federal process. It is quite involved. It involves preparing plans at some expense and some complication. It's typically used, so I'm told, in kind of specific instances. You know, it recognizes there is an activity that could cause harm to a species,
Like a
such as
project or something?
construction or something like that. I think there was one notable example. It's a beach on the Cape in Massachusetts that does have a incidental take permit. So it's analogous in that it's kind of general activities, ongoing activities. So that's not to say there aren't examples, but they appear to be far and few between. I think the point that I understand from our town attorney is that, at least from her view, the beach management agreement can largely get us much of the same, to the same direction with less cost and less complication. And so that was the big takeaway for me. Again, I asked her to kind of lay out what is involved, just so we all appreciated whether that's something you want to consider.
It also sounded like it was something that would be potentially a recurring process, which would sort of subject the town in a variety of ways to sort of having these, going through a challenging process repeatedly. And I certainly don't have an issue with revisiting things as needed as circumstances change, and that's what we're doing right now. But again, in totality, as I understood it, it didn't sound like it was the right tool for this particular job, so to speak.
Yeah, if it's something you truly want to consider, I think it's probably something you should engage in a private conversation with the attorney, just to understand, not that understanding what's involved in pursuing that is protected in and of itself, but really what it gets you from a reduced risk and protection point of view.
Right. Thanks. Anyone else? No? Is there anything that you would add, Jamie, or?
I think I'm good. Unless you have any specific questions.
All right. I do just want to reiterate that, this has really been kind of a fact-finding exercise. We appreciate Laura coming here and sharing all the information. We certainly want to put her on the spot and have her, weigh in on how she thinks the town should respond, but all of this, all the data and the context are very helpful. We do have time, probably about 10 minutes or so before we need to sort of regroup and get ready for our 7 o'clock business meeting. So I would like to open it up for public comment if there are folks here. If we run out of time, folks can speak during the general public comment at the start of the 7 o'clock meeting. So if anyone would like to speak, you'd have 3 minutes. And I just ask you to state your name, your address or affiliation, and address it to the council.
Just before you do that, sir, I wonder, and I don't mean to put you in an uncomfortable spot, but this letter was received in late February. I'm just wondering if the council, either tonight or at some point, will make a decision in terms of generally what direction do we want to take, whether, and doing nothing is always an option, of course. So I don't want to presuppose what your decision is, but at some point, and if we do nothing, frankly, we'll be talking about these very issues in the fall around the beach management agreement, undoubtedly. But if there's something you wish to do sooner, certainly providing direction to staff would be helpful.
That's a good point of process, and I'd certainly welcome if anyone wants to.
Kind of like your
Weigh in.
opinion on the take permits. My answer to that is that I don't think we should just do nothing. We're going to get to it in September anyway. And I think in the meantime, I think that's kind of a natural time frame for us to be aiming towards, because we have to renegotiate the agreement anyways. And that in the meantime, I think we can have a fairly general response saying we're going to work on this towards the beach management agreement. And then in the meantime, we can figure out how do we get to what our response or agreement is with IFW for, how to move forward.
Bill, did you want to add something?
Yeah. Tom makes a good point. We need to give guidance to where we think we are and the direction we're going to go. And so I think that's worthwhile. I think several people in the audience would like to be able to have an opportunity to have their say. And oftentimes, as you have noted, there is public speaking at the outset of the town council meeting at 7 o'clock. So don't think that you're not going to get the opportunity to have your say, because you are. Am I correct?
Correct, absolutely.
So that part is good.
Yep.
The part that Mr. Hall made was you need to discuss amongst yourselves, where do you think you're going with this? And so.
Yeah. And don't misunderstand my suggestion of that. I think this session is meaningful in and of itself, that we're not simply ignoring it. You've convened experts and are understanding the issues and taking that under advisement. I think that is meaningful in and of itself. So don't misunderstand me there. But
Right,
if there is a direction, hearing what that direction is sooner than later would be helpful.
Understood. Absolutely. Karen?
I mean, I think I have a direction I would like the town to go. I will say, I mean, in January, I was the one who was saying, I think we should become more in line with the beach management agreement. I think after our presentation this evening, we've learned that we are very much in the minority when it comes to how we're handling an endangered bird in our state. And so, I think we should be taking the recommendation of the experts. That is the opinion that I'm going to continue to have throughout this whole process. I'm hopeful that we can come to an agreement that makes everyone happy. I will say also, I've been advocating for a dog park in Scarborough since I've been elected. So maybe we can fit that into the budget, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact, but I mean, our goal here is to protect an endangered animal in the state of Maine. I understand that there are some repercussions that come with that we can deal with as well.
Great, thank you. John?
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that I would like to pursue a path where we look at other opportunities and possibilities before we change the ordinance. So I would like to keep the ordinance set. Um, the way I look at the data, it seems like we've had really good outcomes. And so from an outcomes perspective, it seems what we've put into place is working. And so I'm not there yet to say, if we don't keep on this path, we're not going to keep seeing that trajectory. I don't think the evidence is there yet to make me feel uncomfortable that, the risk exposure is so high that we need to do something imminently. As much as I believe the experts and want to weigh that, the other data point that I'm looking at is our residents. And I keep going back to our survey where 56% of our residents said our ordinance is fine. 14.1% said they want more dog access. 14.7% said they had no opinion. So 85% of our residents are saying what we're doing is working for them. And so I think that's an important factor that we uniquely have to contend with, that my goal is not just to protect the plovers. My goal is to also protect the interests of our residents. And I think that's what puts us in the tough spot, is that we're here elected not to represent the birds, but to represent the people of Scarborough first and foremost. And so I personally, like, just to be completely transparent and honest, I would have no problem if I had to bring my dog to the beach on April 1st on a leash. Like, I don't think that's asking too much of me. I don't think that is a big deal, but I don't think that's what our residents want. And so I would hate to see us jump to that point too quickly before we've kind of really looked at other options. I do think it's very fascinating that we are not the only, or that it's just us in Old Orchard Beach that allow this. But, if that means in the community of Scarborough, we are culturally a dog-friendly community, I think that's something that resonates with me because I'm a dog lover, and I am of the mindset that they're part of my family, and I can appreciate that there are people who feel that same way and feel strongly about their pet. And, for them, this isn't just a dog, this is a family member. And so to me, that's something that I think puts us in a really tough spot, because at the end of the day, what we've had in place is working. It was a compromise. And it's not perfect by any means. And maybe we could do better with the plovers. Maybe that number would be even higher if we had stricter restrictions, but I'm glad to see the trend the way it's trending, and I'm comfortable doing what we're doing and letting that trend continue, hopefully.
Just Scott, one quick thing, so this guy can finally speak. Just the numbers, I mean, we had 10 nests on Western Beach, and that's the most in the whole state from what I saw of the numbers. No, that isn't. Is it, I
No.
saw 3 at Higgins Beach and 3 at Pine Point and Old Orchard.
Wells Beach had 20, I can't remember if it's 23 or 24.
Okay.
24 nesting pairs just last year.
Right, okay. All right.
Yeah.
And they have no dogs allowed at all?
No dogs allowed off leash.
Off leash.
And then there are restrictions during the day where there's no dogs. And leashed dogs are permitted kind of in the early morning and late evening.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to weigh in on this before I kind of give my final 2 cents and wrap things up?
Yeah, I guess I'm where John is, and in a more succinct point, I guess, is just, I took a look at the 85% of the survey and also the positive results. So I would be less inclined to fully put the weight on the 85% in the survey if the results were diminishing and that we were actually having declining population. But it looks like we put a lot of safeguards in place. And I think the town has been focused on this for probably 15 years. And it sounds like the data, at least with Scarborough residents, are really clear on what they need to be doing. And what they're doing seems to be working. So I feel like the results are excellent. And I feel like the policy, the way it is, seems to be appropriate.
Thank you. I'm actually more where I think Counselor Kane and Counselor Shoup are. I guess I don't feel like we can do nothing. And I'm not suggesting that, John, you're saying we do nothing. I know you expressed that we look at some other options short of changing the ordinance, so I don't want to put words in your mouth or misattribute what you said. And this is a tough issue, and we represent the voters and the taxpayers, but we also have a responsibility to protect our natural resources. And I know when you look at the survey and you talk to people around town, there are also a lot of very strong sentiments about how much people value our marsh and our beaches and our natural resources. And we have a duty to protect the living things that can't vote as well. And we also, to put it in a more sort of black and white way, or a more sort of pragmatic sense, we also have a responsibility to be responsive to this communication from the state that's indicated that there are concerns. And I think to bring it back to representing our residents, we need to protect the town from potential liability. And that's part of why the beach management agreement that we have came into place in the first place. So I do recognize that there may be there's also been discussion about enforcement. One of the comments that one of the emails that we got leading up to this made the point, which resonated with me, which is that if you have a situation where when there's a lot of discussion about enforcement, you might have an issue with your rules. And that really stuck with me. And I really have been torn on this. This wasn't something that, when we met to establish our goals at the beginning of the year, that we had on our to-do list, but it's in front of us now. And clearly it doesn't seem like we have strong consensus at this moment. But this has been very helpful, and I think leadership will regroup and talk with staff about where we go from here, and we'll continue to be transparent and inclusive and make sure that we represent all those different interests. So with that, I'm actually going to close. Sorry. Larry?
Only because of that you characterized you characterized my opinion there. I'm very much in line with Councilor Anderson and Hayes on this. When I'm saying we can't do, the option to do nothing isn't right. I don't mean by that I'm saying we need to change the ordinance or change what we're doing. I'm saying the option not to respond to IFW is what I meant, is that we owe them a response and explain our timeline and what to do moving forward. But I'm definitely not in favor of changing the ordinance. And to John's point, I think our answer needs to be a more holistic approach. What else can we look at that improves the outcomes? Because I believe that if you talk to the majority of the dog owners in town, they're not anti-plover. They're very supportive and they offer to help. And so they're not mutually exclusive. So sorry to jump in.
No, I agree. And I'm glad you did. And I appreciate the clarification. And, the letter from IFNW obviously did open the door for that sort of holistic response and other ways that we might address those concerns. John?
Yeah, one action I would like to propose is that, I don't know how to solve this problem, but I know we have a lot of people in the audience and who are watching who may have really good ideas of what we could do. We got to where we are because of a compromise of different perspectives coming together to come up with a solution. I want to ask the community to help us to say, if we don't change the ordinance or don't change the dates, what are the things that we could do that could help, make it better for everyone, or make it maybe a little less better for everyone. Because again, I want to explore those options. I just don't have an idea of what they could be. And I want to trust the creativity and thoughtfulness of our community to kind of come to us and say, what about this? What about that? Could we try this? I'm just curious for them to come to us. I feel like right now, the only option we have is change the ordinance or do something else, but that something else, we don't really have what that something else could be. And again, we could sit here and talk about it, but I want to hear from the people who care most about this, what they think they can do to help.
And if I may, we have people who know how this has been handled poorly and handled well throughout the state. And what elements of their response, those communities' response, made them successful or failures. And that's where I think we ought to be looking for the two ladies here at the table, the audience who are very engaged with it, so that we can, because I do believe we can find a good solution that's fair. May not be the most popular solution to everybody who has this perspective or that perspective, but which is fair when you look at it in an overall sense.
Thanks, Bill. With that, I am going to close out the workshop, and I apologize for the gentleman who's been waiting to speak, but we will, I think it would be tough at this point to have, you have 2 minutes left before we have to convene for our business meeting. We'll have the opportunity for everyone who wants to speak to do so in just a few short minutes. I'd like to thank our guests and our experts again, fellow counselors for participating in this, and to be continued. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Scarborough Town Council meeting for Wednesday, April 15th, 2026. It is just past 7 p.m. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tony, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Doherty,
Here.
Counselor Kane,
Here.
Counselor Chu,
Here.
Counselor Donovan.
Here.
Counselor Anderson.
Here.
Counselor Hayes.
Here.
Chairman Phillips.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is general public comment. This is for items that are not on our business agenda for tonight. Many of you were here for the workshop we just held regarding the IF&W letter on plover protection on our beaches. I know that there are some folks here who may want to speak to that. And we have one gentleman who was very patient while we wrapped up our workshop, and he's queued up to go first. I would just ask that, as usual, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. State your name, your address and or affiliation. Address your comments to the council and go right up. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rod Wendt, and I live at 3 Armstrong Lane in Scarborough. I'm a dog owner. I'm a piping plover and least turn monitor, and work on the beach from April 1 through Labor Day at Higgins Beach. I'm going to change my remarks a little bit because you've heard a lot of what I was going to say from Jamie and Laura, but I would like to emphasize a couple things as I go through. We talked about the period of when the plovers arrive on the beach and they do the courting and they do the nesting and they lay the eggs and that kind of thing. And I think that that is the most critical time in that whole nesting scenario. Because if the nests don't get started, they may never get started. They may leave, they may come back, but they may never get started. If they start a new nest, it's going to be with more energy and it's going to keep the chicks on the beach longer. So I think of that April 1 through May 14th period as really being the most critical in that whole thing. We talked in the earlier session about the difference in the rules between May 15th to Labor Day and April 1 through May 14th, and I'm not going to repeat that. But I would like to focus on what an off-leash dog can do to the plover community. All it does is take one off-leash dog, ignoring voice commands, running into the restricted area, either chasing a plover or destroying the nest, to do serious damage not only to that plover, but to the entire plover community. A runaway dog did that on Higgins Beach last week. All the other plovers might abandon their nesting attempts or their nests that they've already made them. They might flee. They might come back and re-nest. They might not. They might nest in another area. They might not. All of which makes this time of year and off-leash dogs a real risky situation. You heard that Scarborough and Old Orchard Beach are the only towns with plovers on their beaches that allow off-leash dogs during any time in the April 1 through Labor Day period. And that does attract, as a monitor, I can tell you, that does attract people from other towns who want to have their dogs off-leash on our beaches. My experience is anecdotal, but most of the violations that I have witnessed when I've asked them, so do you live here in Scarborough? Oh no, I live in Cape Elizabeth, or I live in Portland, or I live in Westbrook. Most of the time, it's somebody from another town who wants to have an off-leash dog and doesn't understand our rules and where the boundaries are and that kind of thing. So it's the combination of the rule we have about off-leash dogs and attracting people from other parts of the state. What I think is the right solution is take the rule that's in place from May 15th through Labor Day and extend it back to April 1st. Then there's no change in rules, no off-leash dogs, no dogs on the beach 9 to 5.
I'm going to ask you to just please wrap it up because your time's up. Thank you.
For 7 months of the year, off-leash dogs would be allowed on Higgins Beach. The day after Labor Day, to March 30th. For 5 months of the year, dogs would not be allowed on the beach. I think that's a good balance between the needs of the dogs and the needs of the plovers. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Thank you very much. Again, I do appreciate if folks can keep it within 3 minutes. I know it's tough sometimes, but it adds up when we have a lot of speakers. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Francis Walsh. I live in Cape Elizabeth, but I'm a trained volunteer here at Higgins, also at Crescent Beach, and I'm a shorebird ambassador. I don't want to repeat everything that Rod and I did not talk before this, but I'm here also because I listened to the workshop, and it seems that the concern is when the chicks are on the beach, is the time that they're going to be, they're most vulnerable, they're going to be hurt, they're going to be taken. That's not the case. As Rod said, and I've witnessed for several years, the most critical time is when the birds are arriving on our beaches. And if you haven't seen that, it's a great thing to witness, to see these birds that have been flying for thousands of miles come to the beaches and start to look for a place to nest. I want to interrupt my train of thought just for a second, and I want to thank Katie Foley for posting on the Scarborough Dog website. And she has been asking dog owners in Scarborough to leash your dogs. I think it's admirable. We worked with Katie a couple of years ago on the animal control ordinance on the plover ordinance, chapter 610, when we amended that. And we worked very well together. We do not hate dogs. We're there for a very specific purpose, and that's to protect an endangered species and their life cycle. The habitat area in the Scarborough beaches is a critical habitat area for piping plovers and least terns. And I, as well as Rod, I've witnessed dogs chase not only piping plovers on the beach, but an entire colony of least terns at the end of the beach at Higgins, the land that's owned by Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. So my concern is, as I think most volunteers who have been volunteering for a while now, and we cannot sustain what Sue and Peter Naden have done for years, which is to be out there during March to educate dog owners. I've done it. My wife and I have done that together. We've done it with other volunteers. It's not an easy period of time to monitor during that period of the year, but it's necessary. And as Rod said, I feel there's a great solution would be to bring the date back to April 1. We can't be there during March, but we're hoping that through education, and I think as Rod said, I've asked people too, and it is the out-of-towners that are coming there because they know that their dogs can run wild on the beach. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for the workshop, and let's hope we can come to some resolution.
Thank you.
One of these was. I had difficulty with my printer, and so I couldn't print you guys things up, so maybe I'll send it to you in an email. Suzanne Foley Ferguson, 331 Black Point Road. So what I heard from the workshop was that the circumstances did not change, actually, even though we got this letter. I didn't hear tonight, nor did I hear from the attorney, that we were in violation of the beach management ordinance, or the beach management agreement, sorry. So I think you need to think about that. I didn't hear that. What's happened here is a group of people who do not want dogs on the beach contacted MDIF&W, and they're using plovers to get the dogs off the beach. And I say that because dog owners are as concerned about the plovers as non-dog owners. At least some of them are. When I was on the council, I created that plover ordinance. We do believe in the importance of protecting endangered species, but don't allow yourself to be bullied into making changes that aren't necessary when you see what the data is showing you. Comparing our community to other communities doesn't actually serve the residents which you were elected to serve. there's no evidence that a dog just running through a restricted area is going to cause a nest to be abandoned. It's a theory, and it might be proved, but there are no studies, unless you have a take. And just FYI, in 2013, when we tried to get a FOIA request to the federal government about the take that was on our beach, we still have not received information from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regarding that take. So if the town is going to go forward with more changes, I think you also should try to get all of the data. And I guess that's where my last point is going to be, is that our restricted zone, at least at Higgins Beach, is way, way farther than any recommended Maine Department of Inland Fishing and Wildlife Service recommendation, where they say 200 feet. We're like 1,000 feet. So anytime a person who's a volunteer said we're in violation, we could have been 1,000 feet from that. So that data, you cannot take that data as science. You have to be extremely careful. I want to give all the kudos to all the volunteers and the number of hours and everything, but the data is not consistent. It's not followed through. And I think that, getting an app or something that had consistent data would be a great place to go, or a great way to do. It was not compiled. And then I take umbrage with what the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries, they pretty much said that, oh geez, there were significant violations. They don't tell you what significant is. It's not defined in ours. And they also don't say it in their letter. These are not significant violations if a dog just went like this and someone said, oh, you got to go back. And we don't know that. So I take umbrage with them even saying that. And also, I don't think the ACO, the Animal Control Ordinance, animal control person put this data together. It was a volunteer. And I'm not criticizing any volunteer, but what I'm saying is that the system isn't such that you can rely on that data to move forward with changes that you don't really need, because look at the plovers are still. So I urge you to listen to all of that. I have more to say if things are changed. I think you should start an incidental take permit approach, because I think you should get that FOIA information. And I think the town could get it better than the dogs group could get it. But we hired a lawyer for 2-3 years. We asked for that info.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room?
Hello, Allison Bristol, Bayview Avenue, and the change of topic. I'm I'm commenting on the ongoing discussion of the proposed Metro pilot program. I'm going to read fast. First, thanks to Chairman Fellows for his response to my written comment submitted for the April 1 workshop and meeting. And many thanks to the council for tabling the interagency agreement until we have a better understanding of what the FY27 budget will look like. I did have the opportunity to watch the April 1 workshop and subsequent council discussion, as well as the March 24th Transportation Committee meeting. And I would like to add the following based on comments and discussions at those meetings. First, it is true that this process has been going on since spring of 2025. I've been following the progression since last fall. I attended the November public meeting at Public Safety and have watched subsequent Transportation Committee meetings where the core discussions were primarily about routing for the fixed bus route and explaining how microtransit works. The interagency agreement was alluded to in the January and I think the March Transportation Committee meetings, but was not made public until March 27th as an attachment to the April 1st council meeting agenda. You cannot justify this project or any other major expense by falling back on the all too familiar, it's been in the works for a while, or pointing to the comprehensive plan when taxpayers have not been informed of the cost involved until less than a week before a proposed sign-off, with no opportunity for public discourse. Secondly, in response to Councilor Shoup's question about the 2025 survey and Councilor Anderson's response, It is true public transportation was ranked third in importance satisfaction under major categories of town services, but ranked only fifth in importance, behind flow of traffic, ease of getting around town, maintaining maintenance of streets, sidewalks, and infrastructure, public education and effectiveness of communication with the community. Under the infrastructure category, quantities of sidewalks and bikeways had higher importance satisfaction rates. The survey also found the three most significant issues respondents had thought Scarborough would face over the next 5 years was growth and property taxes, tipping the scales at 76 and 72%, followed by affordable housing, public education, climate change, and environmental protection. Transportation came in seventh, with only 18% of respondents including it in their top three issues. Regarding the interagency agreement itself, I don't have time to go into a lot of detail here, but suffice it to say it's much too broad a brushstroke. And I'd like to touch on a couple of things. First, in response to Councilor Kane's question about a termination clause and Mr. Hall's response, yes, there is a termination clause, but with the way it's worded, unlikely to give the town an exit. As I understand it, Metro is on a calendar year. The parties can terminate within 120 days written notice. Suffice it to say that this wouldn't happen in 2026 or beyond our year two payment, before our year two payment is due on July 31st, 2027, less than a year into the program. If we opted to terminate, Metro keeps the $65,000 capital expense and prorates the rest. The provision also states Metro may also have to engage in a public process before terminating the service, which could be a lengthy process, and that termination could only happen upon satisfaction of all associated legal requirements, with Scarborough responsible for legal fees. So if we terminate, this pilot program could actually cost taxpayers more than $370,000. Before entering into
Allison,
the, yes.
Can
Can I make just two more points, please? May I?
Very quick. And
Okay, very quick.
always follow up in writing.
Thank you. I will. I have more.
you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before entering into the pilot program, we should intend to extend that we intend to extend beyond the pilot phase. We need to have a better understanding of what it means financially to become a member of the Metro District. From the workshop discussions, it sounded like we have no idea. Included in that understanding should be the understanding of what their annual assessment would look like, as well as a ballpark of separate town expenses such as sidewalks, sidewalk cutouts, crosswalks, and bus shelters if we decided to move forward. And importantly, Schedule A only includes a proposed route. It also needs to include the proposed schedule as presented by Metro. Otherwise, how would performance be measured from the town's perspective? Schedule A should also include a preliminary destination from microtransit. It's still very loosey-goosey on how that demand service would operate. At one meeting, when asked how microtransit was used in Falmouth, it was offered up that some students had booked it to go from school to Starbucks and then to a friend's house. This is not a good use of taxpayer dollars. There should be a list of initial microtransit destinations, included in Schedule A, such as to Hannaford's, to the library, to Costco, as well as connecting to the fixed route, with the idea that the list could be added or subtracted from along the way with public input. And lastly, and I'll just end with this, we should not be entering into any costly long-term agreements until we have a real understanding of what the impact of the school project will be on taxpayers. As I said at the Transportation Committee meeting, $139 million for the schools, 8 figures for the new communication systems, increased county taxes, state school funding reform, just pick something. We have too many big ticket items coming down the road to commit to something else at this point in time. And I appreciate you letting me go over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Kathleen Miller. I live at 277 Broad Turn Road, and I represent mostly the Conservation Commission tonight. And I just want to say on you heard some really great science tonight about birds habitat and needs, and I understand people's concerns about having really strong data sets and all of that. I think the people who are doing plover protection work on the beaches are doing great citizen science, and they're doing um, an amazing service to our community, and I want to thank them for the work that they do. And I know that I hear what dog owners are saying, like we don't just, want to harm plovers, and I know that that's true. But I also know that we can do a lot of things that aren't intentional. So I would urge all of you to think about the bigger science picture of this, what do these birds need? And while um, they might be stable populations now, they might be looking like, oh, everything's going well. It is because we do this work to protect them. And we try, so we could do better even. Like we don't know. So I would just urge you to really take heed of what scientists are saying and what experts in bird habitat and life cycle are saying, so that we can make really good decisions for the future habitat of the bird populations that are protected, and fulfill our obligations to follow the Endangered Species Act. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Nina McKee, 309 Black Point Road. I have one more little burden to put on the counselor's shoulders. Driving at Oak Hill with, all the intersections there by the gas station and Amato's and everything, I often look at people who are trying to cross the street and they have to wait forever. It's terribly dangerous. And there are no really clear painted signs, painted things on the sidewalk and stuff. And I'm concerned about the kids who come from high school or from even middle school, and they go over to Walgreens to get stuff to eat, and they cross the street in the middle of the, not where they're supposed to. So I didn't know whether somebody could kind of, probably Tom, have to look at this, because I'm just so concerned that, somebody's going to get run over. Or I saw one little man who was terribly disabled, and he was probably there for a good, 20 minutes waiting to try to get across the street. And I hope he made it. I don't know. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room for general public comment?
Thank you all. Todd Walters. I live at 8 Partridge Lane. And I'm not just a citizen, but also a parent of student within the school system. I received an email this afternoon stating that attending this budget meeting was really important because the school system had been asked to reduce the school budget by 2.19 million. With the remaining reduction coming out of additional items within the budget of 1.46 million. So we're putting more than 60% of the reduction on the school system. And the part that I was excited about to see in the financial documents that you guys have placed online and in the report at the back of tonight is that we have increasing TIF revenues and an increasing fund balance. The fund balance looks to be over $18 million. And the TIF revenues for 2027 look to be up over $6 million. So it looks like we may have additional revenue to be able to close that shortfall within our education budget gap. And that's something that I would like to ask for an explanation of why we aren't doing that, if we aren't. And if we are going to do it, I'd like to hear, I'd like to hear that from our town council. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I will note that we are going to be having a public hearing on the budget later this evening as part of our agenda. And then we will have a series of meetings out in the community to discuss the budget as well throughout the month of May. All that information is available online on the town website. We can help get that out as well. Thank you. Anyone else for general public comment?
Denise Hamilton, Two Rod Road. Just real quick on the dogs thing. I'm a dog owner, dog lover. Personally, I don't think dogs belong on the beach. I've been chased by dogs on the beach that are not under control. I'm following up on my public comment from 2 weeks ago. I just want to go on public record of the responses I received. And this was regarding the investigation and the matter to be placed on the town council agenda. Since the last meeting, Councilor Shoup raised questions with the town manager and responses were shared with the council, and Councilor Shoup shared them with me. After receiving the response, I submitted additional emails to both the town manager and council with further information from my own research. For the record, I received responses from Councilors Anderson and Fellows indicating no further action is necessary based solely on internal explanations from the town manager and public works director. Respectfully, that is not an independent review. When concerns involve decisions or actions taken by town staff, relying only on those same individuals to validate the situation does not provide transparency or accountability. I'm open to sitting down with all of you to respectfully discuss this, as it is not black and white. There are moving pieces that are decades in the making and what appears to be a mutual agreement with MDOT. This approach sends the message that concerns raised by residents will be acknowledged but not meaningfully examined. That is exactly why public trust continues to erode. Taxpayers expect more than internal reassurances, they expect oversight. The second issue I'd like to address is related to the Rules and Policy Committee meeting. I attended online with the intention of speaking on the town manager's report, which was listed as an agenda item. However, public comment was only offered at the beginning of the meeting for items not on the agenda. The town manager's report, while listed on the town council agenda, is only a summary and does not provide enough detail in advance for the public to meaningfully comment during that initial public comment period. As a result, the public is effectively prevented from responding to information presented during the meeting and must wait at least 2 weeks before commenting. For true transparency and public participation, there should be an opportunity for public comment after the town manager's report is delivered, not just before. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for general public comment on items not on the agenda? There's no one else in the room. I know we have at least one online.
Claire, you should be able to speak.
Hello? Is
We
my
can hear you.
microphone working? Okay, my name is Claire Rutenbeck. I live at 2 Ocean Avenue at Higgins Beach. And I have been a lifetime resident, sort of, at Higgins Beach. I've been coming here since before I was born. And I have seen a lot of changes on the beach, and this whole dog thing harkens back to when a certain group on the town council wanted to ban surfing at Higgins Beach. That didn't go so well. I really appreciate all the work that people have done, and I think most people are well-intended. I do think that there are, as one individual pointed out, a small group of people who are not in favor of dogs and they don't want them on the beach. My experience since I've moved here full-time in October has been that dog owners reach out to each other and point out a new ordinance is in effect, or the April 1st ordinance is in effect, and in general are very respectful. That an incident happened, well, I have to say that incidents happen. I mean, that is part of life. I would also venture to say that, has anybody considered that maybe domestic dogs are part of the reason that the fox that roam freely in the wee morning hours aren't going after the nests? And interestingly, I listened last year as the group that was going through the whole dog thing presented, and then the survey came out and the town council decided that nothing had to be done. But suddenly, all of a sudden, there's this letter that came from one or two individuals that went to this other group. So now it's back on the docket. So I am very confused about the tail wagging the dog or what's going on here, because it doesn't seem to me, it seems to me as though there's been a big win at Higgins Beach. The plovers are back, they're nesting, things are going really well. I personally can see all the way down to the river, and I see people turning around well before the sign. And I really think that the town needs to just wait and see how this year goes. And I also agree with that you need hard evidence, not just anecdotal stories from people who say maybe this would work. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your efforts on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sophia, you should be able to speak.
Hi there. My name is Sophia Kane, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. 18 Ocean Ave. I'm speaking in opposition to moving the dog restriction date from May 14th to April 1st. Higgins Beach is such an important place for so many of us, and for responsible dog owners, it's not just a beach, it's a part of our daily routine, our community, and our connection to Higgins. Changing this date takes away weeks of access from people who love and use this beach responsibly. It feels unfair to keep taking away more access from people who use the beach respectfully because of the actions and complaints of a smaller group. I also want to be clear that I fully support protecting the piping plovers. There needs to be a thoughtful balance between protecting wildlife and preserving reasonable access to responsible dog owners. This does not have to be an either and or issue. The protections already in place are showing success, which tells us that we can continue protecting these species without continuing to take away more access from people who use the beach respectfully. Instead of creating broader restrictions, I would ask the town to focus on enforcement of existing rules, education, and accountability for the few people who do not follow them. Responsible dog owners should not keep losing access because of isolated issues. Please do not move the restriction date to April 1st. Preserve the current date and protect a tradition and a resource that means so much to this community. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Oh, there's
Katie, you're up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Sorry. Yes, Katie Foley, 7 Acorn Lane. Very sorry that I could not be there with you this evening. You guys all know how important this issue is to me. But I'm dealing with some health issues and I'm in my bed. First of all, I want to start with thanking Francis. I think he gave me credit that was undue. I did not ask people to leash their dogs. I do ask people all the time to respect the current ordinance and to follow the rules. So anyway, thank you, Francis. That was a nice shout out. I think, when I think about the whole issue, I think Councilor Donovan actually summarized it best at the very end of his comments. He said we need to work towards a good solution that nobody likes but is fair to all. I think that's perfectly said because that's exactly what we did, back in 2011, 2012, when we were working through all of this. I mean, the dog groups wanted the date to be till June 15th, not May 15th. So that was a compromise. We wanted the border at Higgins to be the shipwreck because we thought the delineation of the end of the row of houses would be a better marker, but not Champion. But we compromised and gave up at least another 1,000 feet there. We really didn't want the 1 to 3 leash times, but we also recognized and conceded its importance, especially for all of our dog owners who do like to walk on leash only. So what we have is not perfect, but it has been working and the data clearly shows that. I did want to kind of point out one thing. Tom said that going back in 2011, one of the things that precipitated this entire first event was the taking of the plover event down at Pine Point. I remember it a little bit differently in that the town was needing to apply for a permit, where the Army Corps of Engineers needed a permit to dredge the river between Pine Point and Ferry Beach, as it does every 7 to 10 years. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife said, sure, they'll give us a permit if we enact a stricter leash law. That took place before the plover was killed, allegedly killed at Pine Point. And again, we say allegedly because we have asked for that incident report multiple times. One other point of clarification, South Portland still has off-leash time in the morning. And I think it's a bit assumptuous to say that all of those other communities that may or may not allow dogs, that their rules were made solely because of plovers. They may have made rules because their community's survey said people didn't want dogs on the beach and they're doing what their constituents want. I don't know. But I'm just saying you can't say that it was only for plovers, that the other rules are in that place. Also wanted to point out that this time from April 1st to May 15th, I had spent a significant amount of time mapping out potential volunteers to help with the signs down at Higgins Beach, knowing that the 2 volunteers said they were unable to do it this year, and knowing that it's a precarious time. Unless my volunteers were willing to commit for the whole summer and the Plover Monitor program, which they were not for their own personal reasons, we were shunned. They didn't want our help. And for me, you know, half a life is showing up and getting it done. The idea that you have to have 12 hours of somebody down there doesn't jive with me. I looked at the tide charts. Would it be perfect? No. But if the tide is going out, you've got almost 7, 8, 9 hours before it would come back up and wash away the signs at the top. So maybe you don't have signs all the way to the low tide mark, but you could have 3 or 4 of them, and that's going to signal people to go, oh, what's going on? I'll pay attention. The signs do help.
Katie, sorry to interrupt, but the red light is
Oh,
flashing.
sorry, I don't have
I
lights
know,
on.
I know. Give you the benefit of the doubt. Yeah.
I am just about done. That was really the last point that I wanted to make. We did volunteer to help. We would still volunteer, as John Anderson mentioned, and be part of a solution. But I don't think any changes should be made at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? All right. Thank you. With that, I will close general public comment. Thanks for all that input. The next item on our agenda is the minutes from the April 1st, 2026 Town Council meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Show that's be unanimous. Thank you. Item number 6, adjustments to the agenda. We have none. Item number 7, items to be signed, treasurer's warrants. I signed those before the meeting and gave those to the town clerk. Item number 8 is the town manager's report.
Thank you,
Tom?
Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief, but I do have some territory to cover here. Scarter Hill Road, just a quick update. Councils met earlier this year. We are now in this grant program, or window, if you will, actively preparing that grant, and we'll make the deadline certainly by May 11th. That essentially sets us up for council revisiting this matter, making a final decision in the August timeframe. In the meantime, I have included money in the proposed budget. It's subject to council, finance committee, and ultimately council discretion in that regard. But my intent there was to keep all of your options open until you can decide a final course of action. With respect to the budget, we did complete our kind of 2 marathon sessions. These are detailed budget reviews. I commend members of the finance committee who gave us 8 hours or better this week. And the next step from here would be a couple of weeks apart, if you will, but both town staff and school staff have been given some direction or instructions, expectations, if you will, from the finance committee, and we'll be working over the course of the next couple of weeks to deliver results of those efforts in the future. I know as the matter comes up on your agenda for the public hearing, there'll be further comments about the budget. With respect to legislative matters, off the top, LD 2193 or 73, excuse me. This is the replacement, if you will, of 1829. It was finally passed by the legislature this week. It has been somewhat elusive to, one, get a copy of the final bill and understand some of its details. We're still sifting through that, frankly. I will say that there were a number of major concessions or changes from 1829 that are favorable to the town and other communities. I'll work and coordinate with the planning director. We would expect to provide a full discussion on this when the council convenes on June 3rd, if not before, but you have a workshop on June 3rd, generally about growth, and we see this certainly being part of that conversation. And if I get any more succinct summary of the legislation, I'll certainly share that. I have a copy of the bill and I'll share that so you can read it for yourself, but we might need some assistance understanding what it means. With regard to curbside collection, this is for recycling and household trash. We went out to bid, and for the first time in my tenure with the town, we actually had two bids, which is very, very good. It's always nice to have competition, and have chosen to award the contract to a new vendor, Garbage to Garden. They are known to the town in the kind of southern Maine, central Maine area. They've made their business kind of in the composting end of things, but they're interested in moving into this more traditional curbside collection. We're in the process of negotiating a contract with them. That contract would begin as of July 1st. There'll be much more education that comes out around that, but essentially folks will see no difference in service. There'll still be, scheduled trash days and so on and so forth, but it's a big deal for us to change vendors. And I know all of our neighbors are looking to our experience with this new vendor as well. A couple of road project updates. The seasonal road postings have now been lifted as the weather improves. We're now fully underway with our annual spring cleaning, which will take us well into the summer, frankly. This involves catch basin cleaning, street sweeping. All of that sets us up for road painting. There was a comment from the podium this evening. Our crosswalk and line painting will occur as weather permits through the spring. Of course, we need the roads sweeped and cleared before that. The Pine Point water main replacement project is fully involved. For anyone that's been down there, it's a bit of a war zone. Nearly every street in Pine Point is torn up. But the contractor working for the water company is apparently on schedule. The plan is for them to wrap up around Memorial Day, kind of move out for the summer. They'll do temporary patching for the trenched areas. And then we'll come in the fall, sometime after Labor Day, probably in early October, and do the final full road surface, which is something we had planned to do and chose to hold that off with this project. One thing that we're considering in the meantime, for Jones Creek Drive, you may recall there has traditionally been on-street parking on Jones Creek. This is just a bit of an odd summer because of this construction activity, and we'll need to put lines back down. Staff is contemplating doing a bit of a pilot project just for the summer for some experience to provide for a bike lane in lieu of those on-street parking spaces. So we're engaged with the Pine Point community to solicit feedback on that point. And again, we just see it as an opportunity to test something because of the current circumstance. Spurwink Road Phase 2 is also well underway. The widening of the section from Pleasant Hill Road to the Cape Line is complete, and there'll be a full road reconstruction starting next week. So we're well on our way there. The Eastern Trail project is moving very quickly. In fact, today, the bridge sections were delivered, unloaded, and they'll be assembled actually as we speak. And the bridge will be set in place tomorrow. It's quite a big endeavor. And this bridge is the one that spans over the Pan Am active rail tracks. So it's quite an exciting time. I've mentioned in the past, the project is suffering from some cost overruns. We're actively working to manage those. The strategies that we're using are scope reductions to save money from here on out. If the project wraps up quicker than expected, and it does appear it will, there'll be fairly notable savings. This project by contract extends all the way to October of 27. I do not see how that's likely impossible. And in fact, my prediction would be that this project will be done by this October or sometime this fall, in which case there'll be significant savings. We have third-party inspectors representing our interests, and we'll have a full year of savings, if you will. So I'm hopeful between additional funding from the state and other partners that we'll be able to close these gaps. I have promised to the Finance Committee that I'll provide some further detail and context, and certainly that material will be available to the council and the public as well. The communications project, this is a matter that came up during budget discussions. Staff has been actively pursuing any and all grant opportunities. We've made application for congressionally designated spending from both Senator Collins and King's office. We've heard back from Collins at this point. King is still pending. Collins essentially is interested in funding the project. They would really like, and I suspect we'll hear similar comments from Senator King's office, they would like some firmer local commitment. And so that's a bit of a challenge for us because we'd love to know more about our likelihood of success with grants before we go to the voters. There are two other grants, an EDA grant and a BRIC grant. Unfortunately, both those have further deadlines as late as next spring before we would know. And so we're left with kind of figuring out, how to manage this and when, if at all, to bring this to the voters. But it's a hugely important project, and we're certainly doing whatever we can to identify alternative additional funding sources. I'm pleased to announce there for the two vacancies on the Board of Education, there are two candidates on the ballot, Donald Gonzar and Alexander Weber. Ballots have been printed, and I believe they're in the mail as we speak. So I'm just pleased that we have folks interested in serving in that elected capacity. Included with my report, and I'll just make a couple of comments to it, the Parks and Conservation Land Board has for the better part of a year been, and maybe even longer, reworking their application process. For those that you may not be aware, this board really serves solely for the purpose of receiving applications, considering and evaluating applications for use of the land bond funds that are voter approved. A group of dedicated volunteers, some of whom have been on since the beginning, 20 plus years. And luckily, a lot of that institutional knowledge was still available for kind of their new revamped process. And so pleased to announce, and I included it with my report, a new and improved application process and evaluation process. And they're also working on one that's not just conservation focused, but focuses on recreational uses as well. Mm-hmm. So very pleased with that work and the results. There'll be a dedication ceremony at the library on May 21st at 12:30. For those of you that have followed along for any time, former library director Nancy Kroll, one of her passions or one of her wishes was always to get a backup generator for power, really to serve the community, to be a warming center, to be a resource to the community. And for literally decades, we were unable to. Well, we were finally able to with assistance from the town council and from other sources. So I know Nancy will be present for that dedication ceremony, and it should be nice to see. Bear with me. The Property Tax Policy Committee, this is a kind of a work PCOG communities. And this work is really kind of being done in tandem with some of the statewide efforts and discussions. We've come up with an idea for a local option sales tax that is county-based. So it's a bit different and has some unique provisions. And we're in the middle of kind of testing that with other municipal colleagues. The intent is to finalize this approach and then to introduce it in the next legislative session. So very pleased with that work and my part in it. Just an update on our police fireboat. In the current budget, you funded a replacement for that boat. The boat has been constructed. This week it underwent sea trials, and we expect delivery at the end of April. And lastly, just for everyone's housekeeping benefit, I guess, I just needed to put down our future workshop schedules. Our schedule seems to be really picking up speed now. But of course, tonight we had the animal control ordinance discussion. May 6th, we'll be meeting with MDOT, and this is the proposed Route 1 demonstration project. which I think is a topic that will garner some interest. At this point, we're open for May 20th, but dare I say, I suspect we'll find something to fill that gap, but at this point, I don't have anything. June 3rd, we have a growth discussion. I think it's going to be wide-ranging, including an update on legislation, but also some other more local strategies. And then at this point, we've slated in a mid-year town council goals review from June 17th. So with that, Mr. Chair and council, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Tom. Any council questions regarding the manager's report? Michelle?
I have a few. When you look at the communication project funding, Tom,
Mhm.
I think the brick grant we talked about the other day, and was that the one that was 75-25?
Yes,
And that they would be 75 and we'd be 25?
correct.
Okay, and do we know what the date is on that? Like,
Roughly, it's next spring. So
okay,
it will be after certainly a fall referendum question.
okay. And the CDS funding, do we have a sense of a date on that?
Again, the feedback we've received is that they would rather have local commitment better understood. They don't want to be the,
November.
said another way, I think it's not surprising, they would like to be the last money in to make a project happen than the first money with the uncertainty
Yeah.
that we can make it happen. So it's frustrating, but I also understand
Yeah.
kind of the chicken or the egg.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Scott?
One thing about the Scotto Hill culverts, we've discussed it and stuff, and I've seen that it's this massive cement structure as our high-end culvert. The culverts that are there are steel, probably galvanized, and I don't know how many years they last, probably quite a few years, but not as long as others. Technology nowadays, though, I know that they do have plastic culverts and big ones. And I would like to see a couple estimates to go out to local contractors. And I'd like to see that at the next meeting, an update, what the amounts of the bids would be to replace that, if they can do it with these and get input from these guys that really know what they're doing. I think we should have that information, because this other type of structure is priced exorbitantly. And if we don't get a grant, and we, again, I'll reiterate, I don't want the grant that closes the road and makes it into marsh or whatever. We need the road. I think we should just give up on that one. So we have to do it, and we should be acting on this quick. And this is kind of ridiculous. Stretch us out for years, have a road closed for years is ridiculous. I mean, it shouldn't be an issue. We gotta make something in the budget, because this is gonna reoccur. There'll be more things, and we should have money already allocated to be able to act on this much quicker. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the town manager's report? All right, thank you. Next up is standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. And Scott, while you're warmed up,
Yeah.
start with you.
All right. Yeah, we did last night, had the harbor meeting. Same old stuff. They're gonna put another piling down at the Pine Point Pier, and another new dock added to what's there. And I think new docks are coming to replace ones from a couple storms that we had, took a beating. They're replacing the little finger pier ones that I said at Ferry Beach we didn't need. I don't know if they're doing them or not, but the other ones they did. I assume those ones were in good a shape as the ones at Ferry Beach, but whatever, it's state money and it's free, so we'll take it. Even though it is our money, but, and the boat, got a brand new boat coming. We didn't need, but it'll be a beautiful thing, and it's got two great big outboards that will go really, really fast. So this is a great thing for the town to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry?
Sure. Finance has been busy. As Tom mentioned, we had 2 4-hour sessions this week, along with some prep ahead of that. I'll have just an introduction, kind of the public hearing that gives a little more detail on where we're trying to head with that. particularly around this effort to cut some spending out of the presented budget. And then community services, nothing there, and chamber, not, but yesterday, Sustaining Scarborough Advisory Group, which is working towards a climate action plan, had the second of 3 meetings. There's about 22 people on that, in that group, and along with some outside professionals, kind of working the group through an effort to take initiatives and priorities around, particularly around, there's 5 categories to it, but everything from recycling to admissions and all, but to really work towards an actionable plan for the town. And that is it. Oh, sorry, schools. We had a leadership meeting for that yesterday, and the design schedule is on track. As a matter of fact, the full committee will see it, but we actually got the first drawing of kind of a redraw of what was done for the referendum, with tons of input from faculty, teachers, and principals. And so I think that's going to move into a little more exciting phase where people can see tangible results there. They've already hired for what did I do? So the geotech. I think geotech might still be out to bid, but they've lined up and are actively pursuing the vernal pool testing that needs to take place. And they've also hired a surveyor who will do each site for particular surveys. So it's really moving along well. And I think it'll, particularly for reading out to the community, I think it'll be much more tangible things for the community to look at and appreciate the good progress being made. Thanks.
Thank you. Karen?
Thanks, Corey. So as Tom mentioned earlier, the Parks and Conservation Land Board has been busy working on their application and their checklist. And I'm very happy that Suzanne Foley Ferguson is in the audience tonight, because Sue, along with Doug Williams, have served on the Park and Conservation Land Board since its inception, and they actually timed out. So they've put in so much time, so much effort, and so many years. Thank you, Sue and Doug, both of you. You're gonna be missed. Big shoes to fill, those 2 spots. The planning board met this week. They dove into the zoning ordinance changes that includes the short-term rental language. So we'll be getting an official memo from Autumn, kind of summarizing the feedback that we got from them. They also passed a 24-unit apartments at 17 Broadturn. I just kind of bring that up because it is right against Phillip Brook, which is an urban impaired stream. I just think we need to work on our ordinances a little bit better here. Seeing that project kind of go through and meet all the current check marks of our ordinance kind of shows us that we still have some work to do. The Conservation Commission meeting is canceled this month. Ordinance did not meet this month, but we're going to meet next month. Right now, I'm only aware for ordinance having the mobile food vendor on our agenda. That's it.
Thank you. I don't have much to report. I was unable to make the Long Range Planning Committee meeting last Friday, but I know that they've continued to work through kind of taking a fresh look at the zones all around town, and part of an ongoing effort to sort of reconsider and reclassify and simplify some of those. And I know that work will continue, and they'll meet again in mid-May. Bill?
The appointments committee met earlier today, took action on the planning board positions that were up. And so to post the following names for the planning board. Move William Sedlak to a full voting member with a term to expire in 2026. Appoint Ed Hodgson as first alternate with a term to expire in 2028. And appoint Marvin Gates as second alternate with a term to expire in 2028. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Yep, communications canceled the meeting for this month, but one thing for council to be aware of, we do have our next series of conversations with counselors scheduled. They run from May 4th through May 18th, and the intent was to try and have these be focused on the budget in lieu of doing roundtables that we have historically done for the budget. So we still have meetings set for people to come and share feedback. We've extended the invite to the school board to join us if they're available, to also hear what residents have to say while we're taking this budget focus. Again, we're there to hear whatever people want to talk about. It's just, it's a timely time to be talking about budget. So those are going to be available. We have 10, I think, different dates and times available to the public where we'll be coming to them in different locations around town. So I'm looking forward to that. We also have reached out to a handful of residents that we want to pilot something called communications ambassadors that I'll let Michelle talk maybe a little bit more about because it was her idea. But we're looking to do that end of May, where we pull together a group of people to talk and go a little bit more old school in terms of just engaging people around a table and having a conversation, no specific agenda or topics, just trying to get diverse people in a room together to hear what's going on in town. Transportation meets next week on the town calendar. It still is up for the following week. So I think this is a change because of conflicts. And so I'm unable to attend. So if anybody's interested in attending next week, I don't know what's on the agenda, but once I have it, I'll share it in case a counselor may want to go or watch. I'll watch afterwards, but I'm unable to attend that meeting. That's it.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. The ambassador group that we're looking to put together, it's basically probably about 18 people from every region of town. And it really came out of feedback that we received when we did the last round of listening sessions in town and talking with folks, that people really felt like with the loss of the leader, that they really weren't sure how to get information and data in a timely manner. And how, if you lived in North Scarborough, they weren't really feeling maybe as connected to like the beach community. So the idea was just to bring, an invite went out today that has about 18 people that were invited to an initial meeting. And it's really to brainstorm and really get ideas from all of you as to how we can do a better job of communicating, getting information out early enough and in time, and how you can then participate in helping us formulate ideas and solving problems and just being really part of the solution. So if anybody is listening to this or anybody's out there and they didn't get an email today and have any interest, they could let any one of us know and we can add you to that initial meeting that we'll have at the end of May. We had a rules and policy meeting on April 6th. It was my first committee meeting with that group. 3 key items really that we discussed in there. One, Shannon Lindstrom from the Board of Education came and presented a naming facilities policy that the school board had been working on for a while and just wanted to, the town owns the properties that would have naming opportunities. So they wanted to share with us their sort of criteria. If someone came forward and said, I want to recognize Mrs. Smith, because she's taught for 40 years, I'm just making this up, but, we want to recognize her. So it could be that somebody comes and wants to name, a classroom after somebody or a ball field or an auditorium. And so they have put together a policy that we agree with, and they would come to us with a recommendation and we would be part of that process. So that's in play. One other thing we talked about, there were a handful of non-active committees that have been identified and really haven't had members on them or folks really kind of raising their hand from the community and being part of those. And we had a discussion on, should those stay in place? Should they be a placeholder? And the conclusion, Tom gave some really good background information on some of them. And we decided to really keep them in play because there may be a time when people get activated and want to engage in those committees. So we did not eliminate any committees. And the third piece, we had a discussion around the placement of the town manager report out. And when we did our goal setting in January, our thought was, is there any value in we have public comments and then we have Tom goes through his report. And we kind of went back and forth on, is that the right placement of those 2 activities? And the committee felt like people, share ideas, speak at the podium, and then a lot of times Tom's able to respond to that in his manager's report or to add commentary or to add detail or activity that supports the comments or questions that were brought to the podium. So the committee decided to keep it the way it is, to have public comment and then to have Tom do his manager's report. I want to acknowledge that Denise Hamilton did speak at the podium tonight and had a different thought, and I'm certainly going to take that into consideration, and we can certainly bring that back and talk about it again. But I think that was, I don't know if Tom wants to add anything to that, but it seemed to be our meetings that people were speaking, and then you have spoken to a number of issues after the fact to respond to those citizen comments.
Right, I think there's value in that. Secondarily, really nothing in my report is going to be actioned
Yeah.
that evening. And so though I appreciate there may be a 2-week lag.
Yeah.
But personally, I think it's well placed on the agenda. It's while people are still here. It used to be buried at the end and no one was here to hear it. So I personally prefer the way it is, but do whatever you like.
Thanks. I'm on rules and policies as well, and just to sort of put a cap on that. I know, and I think we all recognize that it can sometimes be frustrating, and these business meetings are kind of an imperfect vehicle in some ways for extended back and forth. We get that. That's partly why we're doing things like conversations with counselors and the neighborhood ambassadors, just to try to create more opportunities for more kind of informal back and forth engagement with residents. So thanks, everyone. Moving on, resolutions and proclamations. 10.1, Proclamation 26-002. Act on the request from the Scarborough Land Trust to proclaim Saturday, May 2nd as Scarborough Land Trust Day. Do we have someone from the Land Trust to introduce this, or? Oh, there he is. I thought I saw him earlier. There we go. I'm there. Yeah, and just procedurally here, and not to put you on the spot, but if there's anything you'd like to say to sort of tee this up, I will then read the proclamation and then we'll open it up for the council.
Great. My name is Andrew Mackey. I'm the Executive Director of the Scarborough Land Trust. Our offices are at 25 Plaza Drive, Scarborough. I'll keep this very brief. We've done this before. The first Saturday in May is always our big cleanup work day across the town, across our 9 preserves that are have trails and parking and open to the public every day of the week. We try to work very closely with the town, try to provide as much services and public access as we can for residents. We're very proud of what we've been doing and the ability of helping with the 30 by 30 goal and the comprehensive plan and the open space plan. We hope the council will consider this proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I will read this proclamation and then we will consider the motion. Proclamation 26-002, proclaiming Saturday, May 2nd as Scarborough Land Trust Day. Be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Scarborough, Maine, and Town Council assembled that whereas the Scarborough Land Trust was founded as the Owasco Land Conservation Trust in 1977 by 8 local residents and has served the town for nearly 50 years, and whereas the Scarborough Land Trust has permanently protected over 2,000 acres of natural resources, farmland, scenic vistas, and areas of historical significance throughout Scarborough, and whereas the Scarborough Land Trust works with willing landowners and community partners to conserve land, provide public access, conserve wildlife habitat, protect Scarborough Marsh, and keep farmland for the benefit of the community, and whereas the dedicated volunteers of the Scarborough Land Trust build and maintain trails, monitor lands, manage forests and wildlife habitat, test water quality, conduct citizen science projects, and ensure these lands and waters thrive today and for future generations. And whereas the Scarborough Land Trust is a partner with the town of Scarborough and helps work toward the 30 by 30 goal and implement sections of the open space plan, comprehensive plan, and vulnerability study. And whereas the Scarborough Land Trust conducts environmental education programs and other field experiences to connect more people to Scarborough's beautiful and diverse landscapes. And whereas open lands provide places to recreate, nurture physical and mental health, increase our community's quality of life, and foster an appreciation for the natural world. And now therefore be it resolved that the Scarborough Town Council do hereby proclaim Saturday, May 2nd, 2026 as Scarborough Land Trust Day. throughout the town of Scarborough, Maine, and we urge all citizens to participate in their annual cleanup day on this day. Signed and dated this 22nd day of April, 2026, on behalf of the Town Council and the Town Manager of Scarborough, Maine. Welcome a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, John.
I'm hearing some whispers in the audience, maybe that should that be April 15th, not the 22nd on the proclamation? I'm hearing whispered, I could hear it.
It is indeed, today is indeed April 15th. I'm like Anchorman. I just read what's. Future reference. Yeah. April 15th. Good catch. All right. This is supposed to be one of the easy ones.
Yeah.
All right.
But other than that, I think this is great.
All right.
I'm supportive of it.
Thanks. Anyone else? Karen?
I just want to thank the Scarborough Land Trust and Andrew. You guys have been a great partner in this 30 by 30 goal, and I'm really proud of the work we've done, and I'm looking forward to continuing that work with you.
Right. Yeah, I wholeheartedly support this as well. Land Trust does great work around town, including trail work for the existing conserved properties. I think it's been great that there's now the brick and mortar location at Oak Hill where people can go in and get materials and talk to people. So, and yeah, certainly encourage people to take part in all the cleanup activities this time of year. So there's no further discussion. I will call the vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now shifting gears, public hearings. 11.1, order number 26-029, 7 p.m. public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2027 municipal and school budgets. This is a public hearing. We're not going to have any council deliberation on this evening, but I'd like to ask the Finance Committee Chair, Councilor Kane, to just give a quick recap of sort of where things stand right now and sort of and the outlook going forward before we open it up.
Sure, thank you. Just very briefly, both the school department and the town have submitted proposed budgets for us for the fiscal 27 year. And the council, as some of you will know, had an original goal of a 0% tax increase or mill rate increase is what we were striving for. There were some discussions after that have really spoken to it as being aspirational and intentional about that we were really just trying to focus on spending restraint with the pending school project coming on board and increasing in impact to the community over the next 3 years was just really to put in an effort to control spending this year. From feedback from both the town manager and the school board chair, really felt like it was much more beneficial if they had a hard target to shoot for. We obviously, what we were asking for was aggressive and would have impacts. So the Finance Committee, instead of zeros, said we would like to shoot to have a tax increase of no more than 2%, which is a difference in the amount they would need collectively to cut from 5.5 million to 3.65 million. So we've said, we heard them and are trying to accept that change in the goal. There was a public comment tonight about the split between the schools and the town budgets. And we did specify that to be 60% of the savings findings to come from the schools and 40% from the town. That is based on a proportional amount that the schools and the town each make up of the total budget. In actuality, the schools is a higher percentage of that, but I think we do recognize that the schools don't have as much flexibility in where they find their savings. And so we're not holding it. We set it at 60-40, that split. And my understanding is that's been somewhat historical in how we've done this in the past. But I really want to thank everybody involved who presented to the Finance Committee and the work that's gone into it for a few months of putting this together. I really walked away with a feeling of as always, that the professionalism and knowledge of our staff in both departments is incredible. They really understand their business part of our town. And I believe that they do have the best in mind for the community. And I'm really looking forward to a collaborative process as we move forward. But I don't discount that it is an aggressive goal with some challenges ahead. And I understand that, and all of us, I think, as well, understand that there are difficult choices with potential impacts that we will have to decide the hit of those impacts and where there may be room for give and take on that. But it is really what our community has asked of us, particularly this year. And we are really going to try to push and hit that goal. So, but I do appreciate the effort that'll be needed to be involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. With that, I will open up the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak, please just come on up to the podium and state your name and address, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Do we have any takers? The hearing is open. I think we have someone. Hello again.
Thank you. Appreciate your response for the explanation on where things stand with the proposed budget reductions. I was wondering if you could address the increase in the TIF revenues that we've seen over the past 3 years, as well as the increased fund balance that we maintain, and how those funds are going to be planned to be used, and if they could potentially be used to offset this $3.4 million deficit that is being proposed as a cut that is needed to the budget. Thank you.
So typically, the hearings are not really set up for Q&A, and I do apologize if that was the expectation. I know it's one of those inherent limitations and so how these things are set up. I know that I'm just speaking for myself, and I think I can speak for others, that we will certainly take note of anything that needs to be addressed or responded to. We'll make sure that people get that information. We're all available by email. All of our contact information is listed online. I know there's also a vehicle for keeping a running list of questions online so that we can make sure that those are addressed. So we do appreciate that comment and that question, and we'll be sure to get it addressed. Anyone else? Do we have anyone online? No? Okay, going once, going twice. I will close the public hearing. Thank you. And again, this process is still in its early stages. Be a lot more opportunities for public comment and interactive discussion. Thank you. 11.2 on the agenda, order number 26-032, a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendment to Chapter 421, the Town of Scarborough Authorization of Outdoor Services Ordinance, amending the applicable time period for the May 1st, 2026 through November 15th, 2026. Autumn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is our annual ordinance that we put in place to allow outdoor dining. And we have tent permits that come in. So I'm here just to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you. This is a public hearing. Do we have anyone who would like to comment on this? All the usual ground rules? Not seeing anyone? All right, well, I will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion on this?
So moved.
All right, any council discussion on this or questions for staff? Nope, I'm good as well. With that, I will call the vote. All in favor? Thank you, that's unanimous. Thanks. Yes. Maybe makes up for last time, I don't know. Item number 11.3, order number 26-034, a 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a waste hauler license from Jason Gilpatrick, doing business as Dump Guy, located at 16 Mayetta Drive. Do you have this one, Tony?
On behalf of the clerk's office, I present this request. It is a new application. It has been vetted. It's gone through all the proper procedures, and the clerk's office is looking for approval from the council.
Great, thank you. I will open the public hearing on this. If the applicant or anyone would like to speak on this, please come on up. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Would welcome a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any council discussion on this? John?
I just love the Dump Guy. I think their commercials.
Yeah.
I love that they come to my house and take all my stuff. So
It's the best.
it is the best. So,
Been known to utilize them as well.
yeah, so super happy to approve this.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I'll just add something to that. I often wonder if they could make money on reselling some of the things, because there's really good stuff that gets in the landfill.
Maybe they
you know?
do. I haven't seen the business plan.
I wish somebody could make some
Yeah.
money on that.
Either that or it's a perk for some of the employees.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I know, in seriousness, some salvage operations do
Yeah.
make a fair amount of money that way. With that, I will call the vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 11.4, order number 26-035, a 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for an innkeeper's license, a food handler's license, and a liquor license from Higgins Beach Breakers Inn LLC, doing business as the Breakers Inn, located at 2 Bayview Avenue.
Thank you. On behalf of the clerk's office again, this is a new owner, and they are being managed by the Migas Hotel Group that runs the Higgins Beach
Nice.
Inn as well.
Yes.
And they've been vetted. The application has passed all the inspections and is requested by the clerk's office to approval.
Great, thank you. We'll open the public hearing on this one. Anyone like to speak? Okay, making sure. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Great, thank you. Any discussion?
Welcome to Higgins Beach.
All right,
Yeah, this is a great outcome for Higgins Beach in that historic building was up for sale and could have been bought by anybody to make it a single family home or anything else. And these people that have bought it are residents of the beach, and I'm excited that they are applying for a food and liquor license, because that hasn't been an option out of that facility in the past. Well, a long time ago it was, but so like I said, great outcome.
Great, thanks.
I was just gonna say, I think a long time ago, this is how it was run, so they're just bringing it back
Yeah.
to the way it used to be, and it's great, yeah.
Great. All set? I will call the vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And our final action item, 11.5, order number 26-036, 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a special amusement permit from Maria Caldera, doing business as All Grill, located at 238 Gorham Road.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. On behalf of the clerk's office again, this applicant is requesting a special amusement permit. I did check with the office today. There's been no response to any of the abutter notices that were sent out. As you're probably aware, it's mostly commercial properties around that area as well. Earlier in the year, you approved their food handler's license, and the application is all set to go.
Great, thank you. It's helpful.
One thing I wanted to note, they are asking for an exemption from the Good Neighbor ordinance, which I believe was in the summary cover sheet from that Kristen had supplied.
Thank you for highlighting that. All right, I will open the public hearing on this one. So anyone who'd like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Council discussion on this. Any questions or comments? Michelle?
I just have a question about, Tony, when you said they wanted to be exempt from the good neighbor ordinance,
Yes.
is that a common request?
I think we've only had 2 other applicants in the past that have asked for an exemption. It's where they go past the hours that are allowed.
Oh, okay.
Like on some evenings, they're gonna go past 11.
Okay.
Yes, there've been issues in the past, so we've modified the application. We've modified the application to make certain that they make us aware, the council and public and butters aware of how they may need to do something different than the good neighbor ordinance. And it's served us very well.
Thank you. John, did you have something? No. Okay. One down here? Larry?
I did look at this. I saw this because some of the hours go to 10, and then some of their events go to midnight, and also I did look at it on the map. It's almost completely surrounded by commercial properties.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an issue.
Yeah, there's one residential property, and I think it may be owned by the same, it's on the same adjoining lot, if you will. It's owned by the same person.
I don't have a problem with this specific one, but when are we getting the big bolus of special permits? Is that at our next meeting? It's
Yeah.
usually around this time of year. Okay.
You're looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it.
Annual highlight. Yeah, and I appreciate flagging of the exemption request, but as noted, there hasn't been any feedback from the butters, and it's mostly industrial, so I do not have an issue with it. Scott?
Just, yeah, on that note, yeah, I do think we have to be consistent and, basically having somebody pay to be able to break a law or an ordinance. And, I mean, either you can or you can't. In this instance, obviously, it's all commercial around it. It's a good idea, maybe to have a little bit of leeway there for this kind of occasion. But I know that there's other situations like we're gonna have to come up to, where I've had calls with people saying, hey, we have an ordinance against this, and they can go and break the ordinance and they're not happy with it. So, and the other thing I had was, just curious as to, it says amusements, what's amusements? Is,
It would be like a karaoke or
Oh, okay.
trivia.
the music and the
Yes.
loudness
Yeah.
until,
Mhm.
late, yeah.
Don't get too excited.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Scott, when
Yeah.
you look at the detail, it says they're having karaoke on Fridays if you're interested, and salsa Wednesdays, live music Tuesdays and Thursdays, and a wedding till 1 a.m. on April 25th if you're invited.
Can't wait.
I'm feeling a council retreat on Wednesday.
Save the day. Yeah, I think this is an appropriate process. It provides for visibility and for butters to comment if they're concerned, and the council ultimately has the ability to approve or deny that request. Or modify, right. Great, thanks. So if there are no other comments, I would call the vote on this. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Old business, none at this time. There's no new business at this time. Non-action items. Any council member comments? John?
Yeah, one, I just want to congratulate Larry for a really great first two forums with the departments. I think it went really smoothly. I really appreciated how you set the tone up front, similar to what you talked about this evening in terms of the direction that we're trying to go as a committee. And I just, again, thank all of the hard work that staff does. It's very difficult to make these tough choices because it's very clear that both on the town and the school side, they've already done a lot of the tough choices. And so now we're asking them to go a little bit harder. And so I'm very interested to see what comes in our April 30th meeting in terms of the progress that they've been able to make and understand the trade-offs that we may have to decide whether or not those trade-offs are worth the 2% target or not. So I'm looking forward to continue that process. Just to respond to the gentleman who was here in case he watches later, I think he was asking, can we use TIF revenues for the school? The answer is no. Unfortunately, it's not a qualified use to use TIF revenues for school operations. We have been able to apply it to town operations where it's qualified, but a lot of times it goes towards capital. And then fund balance. There was one year, I think Karen, you and I were here, where we were toying with the notion of using unassigned fund balance as a means to get the tax rate lower. This was the year when we were doing the revaluation, and it was proposed as a separate amendment for deliberation, and ultimately the council decided not to do it. And I think a lot of the rationale was we knew this big school bond was coming. So the actuality of keeping that unassigned fund balance growing rather than using it could help us get a better bond rating. And I think that worked in reality. And so I'm, in retrospect, glad we didn't do that. And because we still have the big school bond before us, I would not recommend that we entertain using unassigned fund balance, because that's going to help make sure that we get a better bond rating, which will help with our rate, which will help ultimately keep taxes lower overall. So, but again, if that's something that the council wants to further deliberate or explore, we could do so. I just wouldn't recommend it.
Great. Thank you. That's helpful context and history.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Larry?
Yeah, I'll just kind of throw back to John that I meant to mention it earlier, that just today, the town newsletter came out with a council coroner article from John, who does a fantastic job of explaining the intent and the outcome, the real impacts and kind of the tone of what we're trying to accomplish. So I appreciated that, John. It was really well done.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to also add my thanks to the Finance Committee for all their work this week, and to staff and the school department for participating in all of that, and kind of working in good faith and pragmatically toward what will hopefully be a workable compromise for everyone. And I think, I know we're just really still in the early stages in this, as we've said, and there's a lot of hard work. So I don't want to, certainly not time for any victory laps yet, but I will just point out that we're coming at this from a position of relative strength, and all we have to do is sort of look around at some of our neighboring municipalities that are really grappling with some really truly difficult and damaging decisions regarding eliminating positions and still having fairly significant tax increases. So I don't want that to be lost on anyone. Again, knowing we still have a lot of work to do. We're not there yet, but and I also thank Communications Group for organizing another round of conversations coming up. Any final words from anyone? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.